Good evening. Hey, Wani. Hey, Kush. What's up, Highland? Leon. Never duplicated, just and righteous anger. It's good to see you, love. Today we're gonna dive into this question, like my grandmama and them used to say this question here. Um, who built America? Immigrants or Black Americans? Because they say this is an immigrant country, right? A country of immigrants. Is that true? Is it a myth? You know what I'm saying? As a licensed historian, I'm gonna say that's a myth, and I'm prepared to prove it tonight as I defend foundational Black Americans. What's going on, Wani?
Hey, hi everybody.
Uh oh, Wani, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is Wani talking? Oh boy,
Oh,
I
SpaghettiOs.
can't hear anybody.
I gotta go
It's
down.
doing it again. Let's see. All right, let's see. My space acting up. I can't hear none of y'all. Okay, I'm gonna bring you back up. Hey, Wani, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it was you. Okay, I thought my space was acting up again. All right, what you got? What are your thoughts?
Just, well, people immigrated here into a fully formed country.
Hello.
So I have no idea why Italians and all these others, Polish people, would come here if there was nothing here but an open field. So we're going to start talking about how this place turned from an open field and forest into something that people would want to immigrate to, whether it be at the end of the 1800s or mid 1900s or presently. We're gonna delve into it. We'll just wait for a few more people to come in.
Oh yeah, we're getting in this one because this is this we got I got to get rid of this myth because I'm sick and tired of it. Hell, who do we want to start with? We want to start with the Irish, the English. Do you want to start with the Native Americans or red ones? Because they were kind of immigrants too.
Hmm.
We really technical.
Yes,
Um,
the Native Americans will be considered ancient immigrants. They came here
ancient.
for a better life. They definitely had the same motivations as immigrants today. However, they are from Siberia, Asia, and they are not from here. And they did not build um, cities. They may have had some structured governments, but they did not have cities that they can claim. Also, another issue is that they said it's not in their belief system to own land or own the skies with the birds in it or own the oceans with fish in it. So if it's not in your belief to own land, the sky, or the sea, then you can't later complain that those things have been taken from you. You can
Good.
complain that you have been harmed and beaten up and moved and killed. Certainly, you can complain about a genocide and aggression, but you can't complain that someone took your land if you did not believe in the principle of land ownership.
This is facts. The quote, as it were, was, "How can a man own a lake?" The European said, "Let me show you this gun. I'm gonna show you how." But it's a really good point. The red Native Americans, like Wani just said, were immigrants to this land, although the land didn't really have a name that I'm aware of. Um, they came over. A lot of people believe on the was it the Bering Strait, or what was the name of the
Mm-hmm.
land?
Bering
Yeah,
Straits.
Yeah, they so the going theory, for those of you who don't know, I used to work at the museum, the Smithsonian. I worked at the Museum of the American Indian, and that was one of the most interesting jobs I ever had. Not because of the I get the acronym wrong. National Museum, NMAI, National Museum of the American Indian. It wasn't just because that, and the museum back then was beautiful. It was interesting because Smithsonian is damn near top secret facility, and the procedures I had to go to get cleared to work there, I almost had to get like a security clearance. Um, yeah, just. Oh, I'm sorry, I canceled it. I'm sending Nikki co-host now. Um, so yeah, so it was like men and like Mission Impossible. It was like lasers and stuff. They scanned my eyeball. They scanned my. It was really just like Men in Black because
Mhm.
those of you familiar. No, really,
I
those
believe
of you
it
from.
because of the top secret things that they keep. I believe that you would have to go through all that. I've had to go through some changes to go to some of these areas in universities myself.
Wow.
Museums and certain areas, yeah.
Yeah. So if you remember Men in Black, you remember how when Will Smith had the appointment as a Man in Black, and he went to this unmarked building in D.C. that was hidden in plain sight, and then went downstairs, and there's a top secret facility. The Smithsonian is just like that. You go to those of you familiar with D.C. It's called LaFond Plaza. It's like a little cute little mall near downtown, which nothing there but corporate buildings, or as so it seems. And that big tall pointy building, those of you who know DC know what I'm talking about. That big tall skinny pointy building in LaFond Plaza is the Smithsonian's Men in Black building with lasers and eyeball scanners and all that type of stuff. Well, uh, at Smithsonian Museum of National the American Indian, I just learned a lot, and I learned that basically, according to their historical canon, the red or Asian Native American came to the Americas, be it Canada, North, United States, Central America, South America, et cetera, looking for some food. Um, their theory is that they were chasing buffalo, so they chased buffalo. I don't know how true that is, but that's their theory, and if their theory is correct, they're immigrants. They came here for a better life. Now, the Irish came here in search of another set of potatoes, um, but the Native American came here in search of food as well. So their food was more noble. It was. And and what I learned at the Museum of the American Indian is the Native American, the Asian um, Native American was the red native rather was very crafty with the way they wasted nothing. They have a shop downstairs where they have a buffalo that's been flayed, and even down to the sinew. They use sinew like rubber bands. They keep the bladder of the buffalo because the bladder can hold water. It makes sense. And they turn the bladder of the buffalo into a canteen, which is a little gross. Sounds gross, but it actually wasn't that gross. It looked like a piece of like a plastic bag. But yeah, everybody's an immigrant but us, which makes sense because that's why we've been denied a formal identity, because that has to be the secret. That cannot come out. If it came out and it was justified that we are the only non-immigrant, it would be totally legally sound that this is our shit and we should call the shots on our shit. So you got to call us all kind of shit that don't make sense, like, uh-oh, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. Like names that are not connected to a land-based um, identity. Let's leave it there. Kanye, talk to me.
No, it's good with you, bro. Yeah, I was trying to get it there. Yeah, no, that's a fact. They always trying to reclassify us into something. We went through more reclassifications than anybody else ever in this country, and there's a reason for that. They keep trying to hide the history, but the deeper you look, the blacker it gets, and I mean culturally black, by the way. What's going on with you, bro? What's up, Bonnie, Nikki, Chief? It's been a minute. Chopping up too.
I'm I'm doing well, man. You just reminded me of something one of my favorite comedians, the late great Paul Mooney, said. He said, if you keep looking through your family tree, he said a nigga gonna fly out. That's what he said.
Hey, real quick, yo, I wanted to do a space about Black American history. 'Cause I think a lot of people don't actually know what was going on. I sent you a DM about it like a week ago or so, but I might do it
Okay.
sometime next week. But I would like to talk to you about it in the DMs. Because I think people got it confused. I've been seeing a lot of people getting things mixed up, saying that the Haitians freed us from slavery. And like, what y'all talking about?
Oh
They're
Yeah,
very
wow.
desperate
yeah,
at this moment.
yeah. But it's like a lot of people don't actually know what was going on at the time. Like the French were in the middle of I don't know this thing called the French Revolution, and so when Haiti rose up, let's just say it was perfect timing. All right, let's just say perfect timing. They didn't have that much money. And shout out to them. Not trying to diminish what they did, but we're not gonna sit here and pretend like this was just a force on force attack. But anyway, I just wanted to go over, Black American history. Some people who know what they're talking about, um, and a couple of deniers. Just to make it interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's chop it up, and I give you some textual evidence from Dr. Jacob Carruthers to shut the these soothsayers down, because they're doubling down on revisionist history because we are awakening, and they're trying to double down with all these lies. But here goes, like my grandma used to say, look at God, because we have all this evidence. You can't argue with this. You can't argue. You can do all the plebiscite babbling you want, and get slapped upside the head with some evidence from not only from our dear Black scholars like Dr. Jacob Carruthers, but white ones too. We got plethora of white scholars who were not popular, but like um, well, I get into it in a moment, but we got plenty of them to prove the point. But to your point about the French, according to Dr. Howard Zinn, he says, with the French defeated, the British government could turn its attention towards tightened control over the colonies. It needed revenues to pay for the war and looked to the colonies for that. Also, the colonial trade had become more and more important to the British economy and more profitable. Okay, why did I read that? I read that because you brought up a really powerful point, Kanye. Before Americans called themselves white, they were like kind of like French and British and Spanish. And here goes the kicker: they were fighting each other.
Locked into an
Our
eternal
existence,
war. The French.
hell yeah. We're the best thing that ever happened to them because we gave them a distraction. They said, hold on, I'm going to stop cutting the British throat, French throat, Spanish throat, et cetera, and focus on them. What should I call them? I don't know. The Portuguese call them a Negro. Get them.
So, um, I'm going to go back to the original title. Who built America? Immigrants or Black Americans? Well, we'll just say this. North America was a big open field, very forested. And these people came over, they did not immigrate. Because if I take a shackle and put it around your neck and drag you from Los Angeles to Mexico, did you immigrate or do you need to call the police? There is no immigration with the, if you are going to, even if you say, I'm not African, I'm all indigenous, you still didn't agree to go on a plantation. You were forced to go on the plantation. So it doesn't matter which way your lineage falls, if you are a combination like me, or if you are more indigenous, Black Indian, which they say doesn't exist, even though they did the science and said it does, um, because there are two founding populations that they admit to, one of Austronesian and the other of Asian. So whichever the situation, you did not willingly agree to do any of those things. So we cannot be immigrants. Certainly, our DNA profile is created here in North America and nowhere else. So if you show my DNA profile, a typical Black American DNA profile, it's not going to look like anybody anywhere else in the world. And anyone is going to immediately say, this person is from North America. Immediately, because they know the indigenous admixtures for North America is going to throw it off. And they even know the types of Europeans that we had here. So a lot of Black Americans have Scandinavian admixtures where other groups don't. That's not a thing.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, there's a reason for that. I don't think that there's another reason for that. I don't think we covered because I've been having some difficulty in locating Dr. Lerone Bennett's book. Although I have excerpts on my phone, so I can prove it. Um, According to Howard Zinn, quote from time. Well, what I'm trying to say is America, the Black American is an amalgamation of whites. There were whites involved in the early planning of the slave trade. The Europeans intended to use Native Americans, who I think were black, but I'm gonna leave that alone. For those of you who don't know me, I did a training with the United States Marine Corps. I'm not a Marine, but I love the Marines. And when we were done getting our asses whooped, the Navy NCO with her broke her ankle. I had premonition when I met the cadets I was gonna train my little, I guess Marine called it platoon. I saw these kids and they had cuts and scars and bloody noses, and I was like, "What in the hell happened to them?" I found out, but when we were done bleeding and scraping and wiping CS gas out my sores, um, the Marines were kind enough to let us go to their museum, wherein downstairs I saw a gigantic picture. You know, the early picture, the one that would explode, the camera go boom. It was a real picture, though, of the War of 1812, wherein the Marines rounded up about 150 Indians, air quotes, and they looked like my Uncle David. Chocolate, big old afro, big full lips, full beautiful nose. They had feathers in their hair, if that helps anybody, but they looked like um, black folks to me. Anyway,
Those
You know what's
same
so
crazy
people
about
are
that?
those same
go
those
ahead.
same people are in Papua New Guinea, Fiji, all across the Pacific Islands. They're still there today. You know.
Yep,
Crazy part about it is my grandmother is full-blooded Choctaw, and she darker than me.
right.
She
Nobody
gets
wants
a
to talk about
whole
that. And
check for the shit. I got a homeboy on the app named Canaris. His dad straight look like us, talk like us, is us. They got documentation. But when I hear people say shit like, "Oh, y'all pretend isn't like," do y'all do realize the French and Indian War wasn't necessarily Indian as you would say? It was fighting black folk. They even said it. Make no mistake, this is a Negro war.
exactly. What did Andrew Jackson say? He said, I'm paraphrasing that bastard, but I'm gonna paraphrase him. He said they sent me down here to fight some Indians, and I didn't find nothing but a bunch of niggas. Well, the amalgamation that our sister Wanda was talking about was because early on, when the Europeans tried to use Indians, quote air quotes, as slaves, it didn't work out. So they had to perfect the system of slavery. So, given European history, given their vicious history, it made sense that they would do this. They practiced the institution of slavery on themselves. Dr. John Henry Clark said that the English had a dress rehearsal. He was trying to be funny. Well, according to Dr. Zen, well, when they practiced on themselves, they captured white women and children from Europe with a thing called a spirit. It was a guy's spirit that would run around the mall stealing little girls. It got so bad at some points in England and Germany that they had an onlooker, and if he saw a spirit, he would yell in the crowd, "Run! It's a spirit!" But they would, kidnap white girls and bring them over. Well, those white women, did y'all know that in the 1600s, a lot of time those white women would join forces with the black male slave? They kind of liked us, and they would create mixed children. According to Dr. Howard Zinn, from time to time, whites were involved in the slave resistance. As early as 1663, indentured white servants and black slaves at Gloucester County, Virginia, formed a conspiracy to rebel against their freedom. The plot was betrayed and ended in executions. Mullins reports that the newspaper notices of runaways in Virginia is often warned ill-disposed whites about harboring fugitives. Sometimes slaves and free men ran off together. Yep. Or cooperating in crimes together. Sometimes black male slaves ran off and joined white women. From time to time, white ship captains and watermen dealt with runways, perhaps making a slave a part of the crew. They ran off with white women. Enslaved brothers was running off with indentured white women. Ain't that a
That's
bitch?
basically what's going on in uh, the with the Mulligans. Those were enslaved men that went up there with Northern European women, created a whole thing up there. And we had a lot of these Portuguese captains. They had African concubines. And then when their children got here, they were kind of given freedom papers. So that's part of that free population that was here too. I can pull up an article about some of these groups that came here and they were considered not suitable for slavery, and that would be one of those groups. But like you were saying earlier, that the missionaries got together and said that, yeah, we don't want to use these Native Americans. First of all, we've humiliated them, we've raped them into submission, we have decimated their numbers, we've given them diseases, we've done everything to these people. They look miserable. And so they started discussing amongst themselves that they shouldn't enslave these people anymore, and that it's best to turn the eyes toward Africa, West Africa, for slaves. And so that began them bringing over people to this land. But
That
back
was also an
to
economic decision too.
it, yeah, it was. And the funny thing about it, this is missionary. These are missionaries doing all this stuff. These are missionaries doing these atrocities and crimes against humanity and justifying it, and then later, after they've already made a mint off of it, because these guys were colonists too, so they wanted this land built up. So these people are over here made fields of gold. This was gold that they were growing. This gold
Right.
that was grown justified the cities and the ports and the train. Who needs a train or a port if you don't have anything but an open forest? Nothing. Open fields in a forest, you don't need to export nothing. So they created the gold here in this country. That can't be denied.
Yeah, we
They
literally.
also they also um, built the first foundational cities. And a lot of people like to say, oh, well, they were just like laborers and just grunt workers. And they, in fact, were not. They were craftsmen, architects, and laborers. People like Benjamin Banneker were extremely talented. I mean, he was what you call a Renaissance man. He had a whole lot of um, skills, and he got letters, recommendations from people. But there were many, and I'll read them. I don't want to read them out, but there were a lot of very well-known architects. And then later, we start talking about what happened when the railroad was built.
Right. I put in the jumbotron the Melungeon people that Wanda was referring to, um, and some of the Melungeons look more like Wani and I. But yeah, it's all cap. We were the reason for all this. There were amalgamations of white men, white women, and black men in Virginia. That's where my dad's side of the families come from. I've linked my dad to a colony in North Carolina, a slave colony, which is fascinating for another reason we'll get to later on. But something happened in America in the 1600s that made America a different type of place, and it involved English secret society. America was really, and I don't mean this in a nice way, I mean America was supposed to be a filthy slave colony, but it was going to be a filthy egalitarian slave colony. It would be like the Marines used to say, "There's no racism in the Marine Corps because they treat everybody like there's black, like they black." That's what General Chappie James said about the Marine Corps. That was a plan for America. There was some intervention by a questionable secret society, hotty toddy people that turned America into an elite white man's world. But before then, it was going to be just filthy and fair, if you will. Um, Also, there were rebellions that they don't mention in the schools amongst whites and blacks. Typically, I mean, more specifically, Bacon's Rebellion, um, ahead by Nathaniel Bacon. Dr. Howard Zinn says the servants who joined Bacon's rebellion were part of a underclass of miserably poor whites who came to North American colonies from European cities. Listen at that. Poor European people that weren't really getting a piece of American pie, right? He says North American colonies from European cities whose governments were anxious to get rid of them. Let me say that shit again, will you please? Bacon's rebellion was part of the large underclass of miserably poor whites who came to the North American colonies from European cities whose governments were anxious to get rid of them. Maybe we need to remind some of these people when they come in here screaming the N word that your country wanted to get rid of you. In England, the development of commerce and capitalism in the 1500s and 1600s, the enclosing of land for the production of wool, filled the cities with vagrant poor. From the reign of Elizabeth on, laws were passed to punish them, imprison them in workhouses, and exile them. The Elizabethan definition of rogues and vagabonds included all persons calling themselves shoalers going about begging, all seafaring men pretending losses of their ships or goods at the sea by going about the country begging, all idle persons going about in the county either begging or using any subtle craft or any unlawful game, common players of interludes and minstrels, wandering abroad, all wandering persons and common laborers being persons able in body using loitering and refusing to work for such reasonable wages as tax commonly given. What did that say right there, ladies and gentlemen? That is your racism right there. A lot of people who identify as Caucasian, as white, that hold on to it so dear and hold on to that status so dear were rejects of their own countries who were peasants and they know who they are. They need the nigga, to quote my dear brother, our dear brother James Baldwin. He said the nigga is an invention. They need the nigga to deflect off of who they are. We, through our existence, made them the myth of us made them wealthy, made them high society, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I posit this country has such a hard time giving us reparations. It has a hard time apologizing because if we're put in our proper place, a whole league of European Americans will have to, by default, get in a proper place, which, according to Dr. Howard Zinn, is a wandering beggar. I digress.
It's very interesting. We do know that there were rumors that they brought prisoners over here, Portuguese, Turkish. I can't verify that, but that was why people were claiming to be Portuguese and Turkish when they were very, very light skinned from these triracial isolates, because those people were here and they could claim to be those people. But we're looking at the same situation in Australia where it's just built off of unwanted people. I mean, it's really something. So,
It is something. What's really interesting, Wani, not, if I may add this right quick, is some of the ads. Maybe I need to post them in the chat. I found some ads from back in the Virginia Gazette, which I think still functions, where they would sell people. And the ads read like fucking JC Penney's, no cap. Check this out. Indentured servants. Oh, I'm sorry. Just arrived at Leestown, the ship Justia, with about 100 healthy servants, men, women, and boys. The sale will commence on Tuesday, the 2nd of April.
that is awful. What's wrong with these
25% off.
people? The notion of liberty is a new idea. Most of the world doesn't believe in that. They believe that you grab a woman by the hair and drag them into the bushes. They believe that raping a woman is not a violation to the woman, but to their husband or father or brother. And that's who they pay any kind of penalties to. It's bizarre. The notion of rape is even new in this part of the world. They just didn't acknowledge it. They didn't acknowledge that taking people against their will, raping people was incorrect. And like I don't even at this point, I don't. It's our idea that it's incorrect. I mean, we're saying it's incorrect, but that is not the way that the animal world works. The animal world works in a way that they were working, where they just do whatever they want to whomever. They push their seeds through whatever females they want. And they will kill you. Animals will kill you. And a lot of people will argue, oh no, they only kill because, they have to eat. That's not true. That's not
You
true.
know what you I'm about to ruin half of your day. What Wani said is correct. So correct indeed that at we've taken on traditions of Europeans which have Wani's ideology of finding a wife to rape. That's the concept of a best man. Back in early European history, they would. I was told that they would find the woman they wanted to get, and they would need a best man because you needed somebody to help carry her off into the cave. Just knock her over the head, and that's the best man. Help me carry this broad. I like her. I want to marry her.
I mean, when you look at the Ottoman Empire, that was a very popular um, location, well thought of, well respected, and all of those women were kidnap victims in the harems. They were all kidnapped. Mhm.
Dr. Howard Zinn kind of talks about that rape issue when he says, quote, against all the rosy accounts of better living standards in the Americas, one must place many others like one immigrant's letter from America. Immigrant, according to Immigrant, whoever is well off in Europe better remain there. Here is misery and distress, same as everywhere, and for certain persons and conditions and comparatively more than Europe. Beatings and whoopings were common. Servant women were raped. One observer testified, I've seen an overseer beat a servant with a cane about the head till the blood has followed for a fault that is not worth speaking of. The Maryland court records show many servant suicides. In 1671, Governor Berkeley of Virginia reported that in previous years, 4 or 5 servants died of disease after their arrival. Many were poor children, gathered up by the hundreds on the street of English cities and sent to Virginia for work. They were gathered up by the spirits, kids lollygagging, playing marbles,
Mhm.
playing hopscotch, and a spirit just says, come here, and throws them on a ship.
Now, one of the main things that made the United States a city, and I mean, made United States cities, was transportation. So, when we speak about the railroads, that is all Black Americans. And the funny thing is, they like to credit Chinese people for building the railroad. They actually built less than 700 miles in the West. And they didn't even build that because they were building it with European immigrants as well. And they were paid. There were no slaves over there. In the contrast, Black Americans were held as slaves by the railroad companies. We built thousands of miles of train tracks, complete train tracks. And in the South and in the East, not only that, not only were we owned and enslaved by the railroad companies, we patented railroad lubricants and mechanical devices, very famous ones known as the real McCoy inventions. And so these were so high quality that people would say, I don't want this cheap thing, I want the real McCoy. So there's a couple more things that we did on the railroad. Not only did we invent things to make the railroad go and work for free, we also uh, created music. Yeah. All of the famous,
To go
yeah,
along.
all of the famous music stars have credited Black American men on the railroad with teaching them how to sing and pluck the guitar in a certain way. They literally say this. They don't, I mean, it's not covered up. Hank Williams referenced Rufus T. Tot Paine saying all the musical training I ever had was from him. So these railroad type individuals were playing music. They were creating transportation so that all of this agriculture that we also created could be transported to the ports that we built, over the bridges that we built, through the forest that we cleared, and we did basically everything in this country except.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the real McCoy that Wani was talking about, I put him in the jumbotron. That is interesting, Wani. I knew about Elijah and his ingenious lubrication system, but I didn't know that not only did we create it for these folk, but we made them a fucking soundtrack. Get the fuck out of here.
We also made it.
Reparations
I mean,
yesterday.
we actually made the soundtrack for the military as well with sound off. Wherever we go, we
Wow.
create the soundtrack. So next, we're going to go to.
Hold on 1 second. I wanted to back you up with some scholarship about
Yeah,
railroads
I'm
coming
not going
from
to do
Dr.
it
John.
right now. I'm just going to, throw it out there.
Go
We're
for
going
it.
to do the Wild Wild West next.
Okay. Wani was talking about railroads, and I wanted to like back it up with some scholarship. This comes from our dear brother, Dr. Claude Anderson, a brother that wasn't listened to, or we wouldn't be so fucked right now. But anyway, the railroad companies, king of special interest. Quote, the major purpose of building a railroad system across America was to move the slave produced goods to domestic markets and seaports for shipments to foreign markets. Centuries of sales of slave produced cotton, tobacco, rice, and indigo built the Southern economy and sustained Northern businesses. All right. To facilitate the shipment of sales of these goods to support the cotton economy, the government did everything possible to persuade the railroads and their stockholders to build lines across the country. Just between the years of 1850 and 1871, Congress gave railroads selections of land extending 6 miles on each side of the railroad track across the nation, totaling more land area than the entire state of Texas. Um, Next paragraph. Railroad builders exploited their preferential status with the government by upgrading their free land and for better lands. For example, before 1900, Congress enacted a law that permitted a railroad to exchange property it owned on Indian reservation for federal land outside the reservation. So we did this work for free. Dare I say that we may you know what? I'm not going to challenge the railroad company. I might disappear. But y'all know where I'm going with this. Go ahead, Wani.
I was just going to say the tradition of Black American men teaching white men to play music dates all the way back to when we were owned by these railroad companies. And after that, they found a reason to keep us on there through, saying that we were criminals, and they just didn't want to let us go. And so,
13th
yeah,
Amendment.
they didn't want to let us go. And so, like I said, the father of country music and Hank Williams credit these men for teaching them how to play their guitar. And I mean, so
That actually pisses me off.
yeah, it really does. And we made everywhere we go, we do make an impression. We make a splash. And so when you speak about the Wild West, it's just, hey, we're out of slavery. Let's go over west. We heard there's some field hand jobs over there, right? No big deal. But we get over there, and these black men that are newly free are being called cowboys, because boys is a slur, remember? And the white men were cattlemen. But we know that everybody wants to be a cowboy. No one wants to be a cattleman. Uh, Everything we do, the title of it, everyone wants to take it. So when they first started making movies, all of the men, Black American men that did things in the West and created a lot of energy and lore and stories about these lawmen and these cowboys and all of this type of thing, they made all those characters white. You see, they made all of them white on the silver screen. So people did not even know. When I was a child, people really didn't know there were black cowboys in the Wild Wild West. They didn't understand that the Buffalo Soldiers cleared the way, created the national parks, protected settlers, stagecoaches, wagon trains, and railroads, and opened up the western frontier as well. We have a lot to do with why there is a Midwest and a lot to do with why there is a West to begin with.
That that TV, as you bring up, Wani, that oh my God, that weapon called a television of psychological warfare not only brainwashed us into thinking that we weren't the cowboys, which anybody with an ounce of common sense could figure out we were. You know, um, it did something else. It made us think that we were not the Native Americans. The Native Americans with long silky hair and the Hispanic slash Asiatic look, Asian look. That ain't Native Americans. That's somebody else. This brainwash machine has done. I don't know if I want to say the most damage, but it's up there. It's all about trying to separate us from our true rightful claim to this United States of America. This is our land. Why else would they spend so much money and so much effort? We need to throw everything at them to make them think that they're not from here and they have nothing to do with this land. They're from a place called Africa, but no place in Africa is offering them asylum. It don't make sense. According to Dr. Claude Anderson, many railroad lines actually purchase slaves as property and business equipment. Shit, I'm gonna say it. Do we have a claim of reparations with the railroad companies? Dot
Yes.
dot dot dot. Railroads use slaves to do the heavy loading, maintain tracks, and railroad cars. Other times, slaves were purchased on speculation for capital gains. Slaves were on the stock market. According to Stanley Lebergo, the North Carolina Railroad listed amongst its assets real estate, tools, and two Negroes. Coca-Cola, Sprite, Tide, some toilet tissue, and a black dude
Mm.
worth $1,500. I'm sorry, worth $1,550. Even when railroads held public auctions or resold their land holdings, few, if any, blacks could afford to purchase any of the parcels. As a result, there were no free black stockholders or heirs to railroad fortunes. Beyond not being able to own railroad stock, they could not get railroad service in their communities. Railroads would not establish train stations in the black sections of any town or city, nor hire blacks for anything except the most undesirable, lowest paying jobs. And as of fucking 2015, when I went back to grad school, I lived in an apartment in Memphis next to a 26-year-old blonde white guy, nice enough, real kind, who was an engineer. You know, the guy who drives the train. He made $80,000 a year. Not bad without a college degree, right? But that shit in 2000, as today, is held down by white boys. We are blocked out of that. Something needs to be done about this. But anyway, I digress. What you got, one?
I'm sorry, I was on another screen. So basically, I wanted to say another thing about the railroad. Um, Marcus Garvey got a campaign against him called the Garvey Must Go campaign because he said that a black person had no right to expect to ride on a train with a white person. And the reason was because he said we had nothing to do with the railroad, which again points out how incredibly ignorant new people coming here are about our history. Who wouldn't know that we have everything to do with the railroad? Everything, every aspect of the railroad, the tracks, the cars, the mechanics behind it, the sheer labor that it took to build thousands of miles of track. And again, if there was no agricultural gold, there would be no need for bridges and roads and train tracks and ports. Those were all built because of the agricultural gold that we had to export.
The hell with Marcus Garvey. I don't have evidence to prove this other than a book that I'm not really finished with. Marcus Garvey's wife was affiliated with the Daughters of the fucking Confederacy. I think Marcus Garvey was an op. And from what you just told me, I'm just going to surmise that he knew that we had everything to do with the railroad. He just was paid off by the Daughters of the Confederacy to keep the Negroes away from the railroad, because that's how strategic people think. Keep them away from their land-based identity. They keep you away from everything that's important. Matter of fact, my beautiful black brothers and sisters, black American brothers and sisters, if you want to know what you should be doing, look at what the system and the TV tell you shouldn't be doing. When they show you a mixed race couple on them commercials 100 times and other alternatives to a beautiful black family, you should say, oh wow, I guess I should find me a beautiful little chocolate girl. Just do the opposites. It's a really nice book on that called The Keep Alien, but I'm gonna leave that alone. To support what Wani just said, with scholarship in early 1920s, chapters of the Universal Negro Improvement Association sprung up all over the nation. It was the largest mass organization in Black history. Marcus Garvey led the organization, advocating race redemption, Black pride, Black identity, and Black solidarity in the African homeland, which had absolutely nothing to do with us, I might add. Garvey followers were groups of young blacks who were disenchanted with the NAACP, the National Urban League, unwillingness to develop meaningful policies and programs to uplift the economic depressed masses. They organized the National Negro Congress. Who did that turn into the Congressional Congress? Is that? I mean, did that turn into the what do you call it? What was it?
Congressional
The
Black Caucus.
Yeah, I wonder, is that the same thing? Did it change
Name it
up?
again.
Whose National Negro Congress,
Oh, I don't know. Might have.
whose membership, now if we draw a connection between that and Marcus Garvey, we will be on to something. Whose membership included aggressive men such as Ralph Bunche and A. Philip Randolph. So he was all up in our business. He should have made it work in Jamaica. But anyway, I digress.
So, as everybody knows by now, we fought in all the major wars in the United States. And again, when we're speaking about who built America, I'm not just going to talk about who physically built it. We've already, showed that we are the reason that it was built because, like I said, with no agricultural goal, there's no reason to build anything. You just have an open field. No one's building anything in it. The earth is filled with big, wide open spaces with nothing going on, nothing growing, just trees and there's plenty of space on Earth. It's just that we're concentrated into these different areas. We are the reason that the cities were even justified. But when you think about the rest of the things that we did to create the United States of America, we made a choice. And I think it was a powerful choice because we could have continued to rebel, which we did 240 some times against European to get the hell up away from them. And we did. That's why we had a large population of free people in the North. So we did get away from them. And we did fight, we did rebel, but we still needed to get the rest of the people out off of those plantations and make it a law that you could not enslave people. So we had a lot of work to do. Another way that we built this country is through abolition. And you can't have a quiet country with a lot of people enslaved. Abolition. Civil rights. You can't have a country with people being violated all over the place. The average age of consent in Delaware was 8. No, 7, sorry. It was 7. And then some
Wow.
women went to court and had it raised to 8. So things like that, civil rights, uh, uh, you know, poor behavior toward people like Black Americans and women. Those things had to be addressed, or else this would not be able to be a country. And our abolitionists addressed all of those things that were fundamentally unfair, but we served in every war in this country. And like I said before, we made a choice. We could have fought the European, and we could have been like another band of Native Americans, which we were scalping, ambush attacks, and doing all that. Or we could have joined up with some of the Native Americans, as we call them now, We could have joined up with them and gone against the European. We could have done a lot of things, but our men chose to fight in these wars based on them saying, we're going to settle you. After this, we're going to give you your money so you can settle in peace. And they always reneged on those promises right up to the Civil War. They made a promise of Field Order 15, and once again, Lincoln was killed, and they reneged on that. So we made that choice. We fought in the Civil War, and we are credited with winning the Civil War. Let me read you a quote. Without the military help of the black freedmen, the war against the South could not have been won. President Abraham Lincoln. And from the book The Black Military Experience by Robert E. Washington, the contributions of the black troops were so significant that it is safe to say that the war would not have been won without their help. That's Lincoln as well. Another one,
Yeah, he said that he 4 times. One he said the 4 times that the he would not have won the war without the help of the Negro.
yeah.
He being Lincoln.
Another quote is, I got to get the fourth one. The bare sight of 50,000 armed and drilled black soldiers on the banks of the Mississippi would end the rebellion at once. That's how fearful they were of us, even though they made a joke about us and said, they made a joke about how raggedy us and some poor white people were dressed for one of these wars. I got to pull that up. It was very insulting, the description of us, but you still lost. Whether we had on the fanciest uniforms or not, you still lost. Anyway, another one, George Washington said the policy of admitting Negroes into the army is to be justified on the most solid and serious grounds. President George Washington. Um, Another one, no troops could be braver than those colored ones who fought beside me. President Theodore Roosevelt. And the last one I'll read is, we have set the freedom of all men at the forefront of our cornerstones. We have now set that freedom of the Negro people in front of our program for victory. um, Roosevelt again. I mean, I could read more, but I'm not going to. Bottom line, we participated in the military, served valiantly, and we're the reason that this whole environment calmed down, or else everybody would still be fighting. Native Americans would still be running around scalping people. White people would be beating each other up. All of these European groups would be fighting. We settled that down by making a decision. Like I said, we could have just run amok and joined in with the fun. But I don't know why they made that choice. I wasn't there, but they did. And that's how America became America.
Yeah, and I also will add, since you brought up abolition, I would add that white women, were tried to fight to for equality. White women abolitionists, but they used Sojourner Truth um, to kind of gaslight their issue. Sojourner Truth, a former slave, was used. White American women, white women. Uh, had several conventions to try to fight for women's rights, but nobody was really listening. So somebody got the great idea to use a black woman. Somebody might listen to her. So they brought a battered Sojourner Truth, clutching a Bible. Just imagine what Sojourner had been through as a former female black slave to speak on their behalf. And then people start to pay attention to the woman's abolitionist movement. How dare them? Dr. Howard Zinn says women put in enormous work in anti-slavery societies all over the country, gathering thousands of people to petition to Congress. Um, as our brother Tariq put in Um, it's acting up. Invite to. Oh, okay. I see. I see you wanting. I sent it again. But um, a lot of the quote unquote anti-slavery abolitionists, white women were. It was a finesse. I'm sure some of it was honest,
Hmm.
but from what I've read in my studies, a lot of it was kind of like a bait and switch.
They've been
How do we avoid
they keep
switch?
doing that to us. They push us out there, and then the next thing you know, they have all the rights, and we get left holding the banana in the tailpipe. Before we move away from the Wild West, I just want to say that, like, we have a lot of folkloric gunmen, but when they went out to become what they would call cowboys, these men were so athletic and they made everything fun and exciting. It wasn't just like boring cowboy work and you're just dragging a calf around and breaking a horse. Everything became athletic. Drives were
Mm.
exciting. And this is why people were talking about, oh, did you see that guy? He did this. Oh, did you see this gunslinger? He did that. Oh, did you see all of these criminals this guy caught? Did you see the bulldogging this guy did? Um, Everything just seemed to be more exciting when we were doing it. There are other groups of cowboys around the world, but they have never gotten the the justification to make heroes out of these people and make them into silver screen idols. That was our influence.
Some justice needs to be done on that behalf. I believe you, Wani. I don't have much scholarship on that. I've heard it. But when you were talking about that, I think back to Memphis, Tennessee, the Memphis Flippers. There's a group of young men who show up to Beale Street in Memphis, Tennessee, a very um, lively strip. You can have drinks and get food and listen to some blues. And these young men, for the last 40 years or so, or maybe longer, show up at the top of Bill to do just these outrageous flips down Bill. And people show up far and wide just to watch these young men who don't really have a school. They don't have an institution. I don't know if they're relatives of flippers from years that's past, but they just materialize and do Jedi defy gravity tricks down Beale Street while people sip on their beer and go, "Ooh, we are the show. We're the sauce."
Now, after we built this country from the ground up, France wanted to offer the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty was offered to celebrate the Civil War victory and the end of slavery. And that um, meaning was covered over by an immigrant. An immigrant came over and wrote a sonnet about huddled masses. And when she did, it changed the meaning of that statue. They put a plaque on there and they did some renovations and some money was exchanged. And now all of a sudden, the Statue of Liberty is about welcoming immigrants when it never was. That's why there's chains around the feet. And the National Park Service has a very nice article. It's called Abolition, and it explains the meaning of the Statue of Liberty. And a lot of these websites that said it was about immigrants, I actually contacted them and made sure that they updated it. So if you see any website saying the Statue of Liberty is about welcoming immigrants, send it to me so I can correct the record. Now, right after we were freed from slavery, ironically, there were groups of white men who tried to do the right thing. They said, okay, these are equal citizens, we're going to go by the law. They can be, you know, politicians, they can do whatever they need to do in the government to have some representation. And we did. However, there's always a racist aspect which always overpowers the handful of people that are trying to follow the rules. And those people seem to dominate in America, and that's what we're up against now. So we came out of slavery with guns blazing, uh, and having our own cities, multiple neighborhoods, and thriving really, and being in Congress, being socially, you know, creating these social centers, gathering at churches, creating music genres, just being really creating the culture that we experience today. And that was always stifled. Every time we began to rise, someone needed to burn the city down. Someone needed to drive us out of politics. Someone needed to drag us backwards. And that's basically has been the story of our life. Uh, Phoenix rising from the ashes and someone trying to drag us back down.
Yeah, like Wani said earlier, I wrote a whole workbook that I ended up getting non-renewed. I lost my professorship for writing a book that helped Black students understand themselves. But I digress. In the jumbotron, I put a page, put an excerpt off page 15, where I show the pictures of those chains on the feet of the Statue of Liberty, which say "hide from us." On tours of the Statue of Liberty, people have reported asking about the chains and the curators feigning ignorance. I don't know what you're talking about. But like Wani said, the Statue of Liberty was intended to honor African or foundational Black American slaves. Now, I did use the term African slaves in this book because I hadn't been met. I published this in 2022 and I hadn't been on X yet. And I wasn't fully awoke yet. So forgive me for using that term. But I do mention foundational Black American in this book several times. So according to me, that felt good to say that. Let me say that again. According to me, the Statue of Liberty was inspired by French abolitionist scholar Edouard de la Boulaye. The Statue of Liberty was given to the United States to honor former slaves of the African diaspora and to represent freedom and prosperity amongst that group. If you look at the foot of the Statue of Liberty, you'll notice a broken chain, which is intended to represent the end of oppression towards African slaves. Unfortunately, the fact that the Statue of Liberty was created for victims of the diaspora is frequently omitted in K through 12 books. I'm gonna say, from my experience, it's been totally omitted. They say it's for immigrants. Not mentioned in the media and not advertised on many physical tours of the site. The narrative surrounding the Statue of Liberty has been so distorted that many educational programs report that the statue serves as a beacon and or symbol that represents European oppression and liberation. Ladies and gentlemen, when are we gonna stop falling for this bait and switch? Next thing we come up with, we need to gatekeep the fuck out of it.
I mean, the fun thing about Chicago drill is it says Chicago. And anything in the future, we're going to have to brand it with our name so that people can't do that to it anymore.
Just call it FBA, whatever, fill in the blank. FBA drill.
So, like an American city or whatever seems appropriate.
The Germans are gonna say we did
Oh,
it.
no,
It's
yeah,
us.
we can't use cities.
We created
These,
drill music.
right, we can't use cities because the demographics are changing in these cities.
So back to earlier, you mentioned our brother Benjamin Banneker, which is a very big. He's an enigma. Um, I don't think he was a member of a secret society. Some speculation that he was a member of the Moors, that lineage, but I haven't really been able to confirm that. Well, anyway, according to J.A. Rogers, Benjamin Banneker, a Negro astronomer, stop. Where did he learn astronomy? I digress. Made the first clock, created the first clock made in America in 1754. You know how hard it is to make a damn clock? Who taught him this?
I don't know. He was a
Isn't that odd?
polymath. I don't even know what a polymath is without looking it up. He contributed to architecture, astronomy, and mathematics. And his role in the District of Columbia survey highlights involvement in early American urban planning. In a letter to Benjamin Banneker, um, a mathematician and astronomer, Thomas Jefferson wrote, I thank you, I thank you sincerely for your letter and for the almanac it contained. Nobody wishes more than I do to see such proofs as you exhibit that nature has given to our black brethren talents equal to those of other colors of men.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
While he was, you know,
He was like a
destroying.
Renaissance man. I would even, I would say a Leonardo da Vinci in America. He was into a lot of things. You sometimes you get those here and there. Not often, but they just have a lot of different um abilities.
Meanwhile, while Thomas Jefferson was writing those sweet words to Benjamin Banneker, George Washington sent a Negro slave to Barbados to be exchanged for a hogshead of molasses, a cask of rum, and other good old spirits in 1776. I'm gonna trade this human being in for some liquor.
Yes, there seems to be some very deep conflicts. You have one group wanting to run around with pointed hats and lynch us, and the other group giving us accolades for our service in surveying and urban planning and winning all those wars for them. So they need to get it together.
Or we need to just delineate and mind our business and put up a wall.
I agree to that wholeheartedly.
Next subject. Where we at?
But we did establish that Black Americans built this country, and these other immigrants came over in the mid 1900s, way after the country was built. And so when they want to go against us, they'll say, oh, look at this. We were up on some scaffolding. Yeah, but you came to a country. You came to a
Yeah,
country that's already been built. Anybody can, do construction work after the fact. We built the country, and we certainly are not immigrants by any definition. It's not involuntary immigration. It's no kind of immigration. So if anyone wants to come up on the stage and wrestle the point, we can. Our experience here is nothing to do with immigration. We're not immigrants. We are,
not at
we're
all.
native to this land.
In other words, this shit belonged to me. Dr. Howard Zinn says the immigrants from Ireland freeing starvation there when the potato crop failed were coming to America, now packed into old sailing ships. The story of these ships differ only in detail from the accounts of the ships that earlier brought black slaves and later German, Italian, and Russian immigrants. This is a contemporary account of one
Ronnie,
ship arriving.
Ronnie,
Yes.
Okay,
go back to your country, Ronnie.
Huh?
who is this? He said, "Go back to your country, Wani."
I'm in it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you need to get lost. I don't think you're from around here, man.
Oh,
I don't get it.
No, I'm
what's
being
up?
funny. I'm not being
What's
funny.
up?
I got written up for calling, telling them I'm Mexican. Mexican was
I
happening to me.
can't. Can you fix your mic? I can't hear you very clearly.
Not bad. It's a joke I was just thinking of. I was telling my other American coworkers to go back to our country because I got written up for telling the Mexican to go back to his
Oh,
country.
Okay,
got it.
I see. I can hear you better now. What's up? Did you want to contribute?
Yes, the change of the Statue of Liberty's feet. How can they not? How can nobody not see that? The big. That's like the first thing you see, to be exact, on the, like, the whole scope thing. Her leg is in front with the chain on it.
They said that
Just, you know,
symbolized the white boy running away from Europe over to free himself here. So they just make stuff up.
or just cognitive dissonance. Is that a chain around her leg? No, it's a bracelet. I went to Statue of Liberty in the early 2000s when I was a child, and I they didn't mention it. And I was told that it was created, to honor America's immigrants, because America's a melting pot, a land of immigrants. Um, Dr. Howard Zinn says, how can these new Irish immigrants, themselves poor and despised, become sympathizers with the black slave who was becoming more and more the center of attention, the subject of agitation in the country? Indeed, most working class activists at this time ignored the plight of the blacks. Eli Moore, a New York trade union leader elected to Congress, argued that the House of Representatives against receiving abolitionist petitions. Dr. Zinn lastly says, racial I'm sorry, he said racist. Excuse me. Racist hostility became an easy substitute for class frustration. That's what we're dealing with right now.
Yes.
Instead of instead of worrying
Usually,
about their country's problems, they focusing on us.
right. And usually we just deal with it and fight back. But I think it's time for us to pivot to a new attitude of superiority over these other groups. They have no culture to offer this country. You could extract, not being funny, but you could literally extract many of these European groups and you wouldn't notice anything was missing. What if all the Polish people that came here and immigrated here left? What would be missing? Polish sausage and some
Sausage.
polka music? What kind of
Nothing
culture
I can
would
notice.
we
Nothing I
lose?
notice.
You know? I mean, we could seriously do that to a whole lot of groups. Extract them and see if the light bulbs still work, if the traffic lights still work, if we still have refrigeration. Yeah, if we still have those .com, .exe, see if we still have video games, see if we still have GPS. Yeah, we'd still be doing things. And some of these other groups that are cloaked under that umbrella of white haven't done anything here. All they've done is come over here and pretend to be settler class, if you will. They don't even have anything to do with the settlers or whatever they went through. And they let them reap the benefits. They really do. I mean, like, why would you do that? Slavic people, Polish people didn't come over here and fight with Indians and go through all the trials and tribulations. So why should they get classed as the same as settler class? They don't think about that because they're so busy trying to gang up. They lost the whole point of being American. There's nothing to be proud of if any old ragtag person can come over and claim to be American. There should have always been levels of Americanness. Always. It should have never been any old person can come over here and be on the same level as someone who's been here the whole time. And that's what we need to change because new
Right.
people coming over here think they can tell us what to do in our politics. And I don't think foreigners should even be able to run for office. I don't even think somebody who doesn't have many generations here is a good representative for anything going on in this country. How can you come from anywhere and dictate what should happen in a country that has nothing to do with where you came from? You're not a representative.
I,
You don't know what the lineages are here. You don't know what the expectations of being an American is in this country. So you should not be able to run for anything.
right. I was teaching Article 2 of the Constitution, the executive branch, and we were going over how today actually we're going over requirements. Since we have an election year, I wanted to show requirements of what the basic bone requirements to become president. And one of my best students said, um, he had a complaint. He was like, why are you able to become president if both of you, and you know who he was talking about? He's talking about Kamala Harris. But he said, why are you able to become president if both your parents are foreigners? And he asked me, isn't that a conflict of interest? And I was like, I thought about it, I was like, damn, that is a conflict of interest. If you got family members, if shit, even one parent is like a foreigner from somewhere, that gives you an allegiance to a whole nother place. Just look at what Ilhan Omar has done to Minnesota just by being a member of the House of Representatives. Imagine what it's going to be like when we have a president, or if we have a president whose parents are from two separate countries. It's a hard thing to think about, isn't it?
It is. And neither one of those countries is somewhere that you aspire to be like. The people from the islands are fleeing the islands, and people from India are fleeing India.
Wow.
And they have something to build on. People in India have a long culture, beautiful architecture, a lot of things they could build up. Um, you don't want to throw that away. I would never throw Indian culture away. I've actually gone there 2 times and I still have to go back again. But the way that they let their country just go down and have people just wanting to run away, and the whole attitude of the culture needs to change. There's too much violence. And they speak about violence here. It's nothing compared to the home of the Thuggee, Thuggee, the origins of thug.
Wow. Yeah, I was reading about the practices in India with respect to selling daughters and stuff. I was like, oh my God. Just, nobody has a right to look down upon a foundational Black American. If you start studying some of these people's history, it's like it makes us look like we're saints. Or maybe we are saints. I don't know.
Well, we certainly don't have any genocides under our belts. We don't have any pits of bodies. You can talk about some, certain cities. We live in every country in United States of America, and they're going to point out some cities where some people got shot. We have people in big pits of bodies in European countries right now. Big pits of bodies in the Middle East right now. Big pits of bodies in Africa right now. We have never produced big pits of bodies from fighting. But guess who did? Asian people were here creating what's called the Tong Wars, Tong wars, and they warred with each other for decades and created extremely violent situation, but they're not credited. The label and the stench of crime does not touch their skin. Their women are standing outside right now in your face doing things, tons and tons and tons of brothels. And the stench of prostitution does not touch their skin.
Professor Noam Chomsky wrote a great book that I would just wish we could develop maybe I need to develop a cliff notes to give to our people, because the book is very dense, it's very professor-esque. It was kind of hard for me to read, and I read a lot all the time. But in the book, it kind of reads like a car manual or something. But it describes the system of manufacture. Literally the name of it, manufacturing consent. And basically, Dr. Noam Chomsky identifies how the American media system manufactures consent for Eurocentric groups, and it's tiered. The ultimate consent and sympathy, I guess, is an even better word. Although he says consent, is sympathy for European groups. And it's tiered because although you have less sympathy for, say, a Hispanic group, according to Dr. Chomsky, than you do for a foundational Black American group. Um, you have more sympathy for a Hispanic group than you do for a foundational. It's like a tiered system. It's very complex, but like Dr. Chomsky points out, is very efficient. It's efficiently done, and it's deadly. Foundational Black Americans are in desperate need of our own media apparatus. I think it may be in our best interest to just shut out the the mainstream media, because it's a weapon. That's all it is. It's a weapon. Um, Clarence Thomas years ago said he doesn't read, he doesn't watch the news, and people in my former circles used to make fun of him for that. But I'm starting to understand why. It's like it's brainwashing. It's the manufacturing of consent and discontent against yourself. Noam Chomsky calls the members of the favorite class worthy victims, i.e., worthy of sympathy. Oh, look at her. She just got hit by a train, right? And he calls us unworthy victims. Same 14-year-old girl who gets hit by a train. Instead of, oh, she got hit by a train. Her whole life was ahead of her. That narrative turns into, what was she doing? I bet you she was stealing something.
Mm-hmm.
It's a brilliant book.
What we need is what other small groups use, which is called propaganda. Propaganda. I mean,
Simply put.
we literally don't have to lie about our background like Pan Africanists did and made up things and uh, made up backstories linking us to Africa with very flimsy dot connecting. We don't have to do that. But what we do have to do is allow people to know that a lot of these statistics on crime are simply false. There's no such thing as everybody gives their crime numbers over to the FBI. This is why Sandy Hook was thought to be just like a fake news story, because in that town of Newton, Connecticut, no crimes were committed, according to the FBI. There were not 20 some murders, according to the FBI, and they never did post that. They never did acknowledge that, because that would drive the crime rate going up, would drive down the property values. So these countries um, outside of the United States, I don't know what their reporting is. It seems like over in the UK they have pretty good reporting, but over here they could report from Chicago every day and say how much crime is happening in Chicago just because it's a public interest. But a town outside of Chicago, they won't report anything. They could be having more crime. Another way that they keep the crime down is they discourage reporting, which is what they do out here in California. We have a lot of crime out here, but the police will refuse to take the police will just simply refuse to take the report. They'll just say, "Oh, nothing's going to happen to this guy. He's homeless or he's on drugs, and he's not going to get in trouble." It's a two-tiered uh, policing system where certain people just simply don't get in trouble, and they're one of them. So,
I saw that happen right when I finished undergrad. I worked at a high school that I went to when we lived in the hood. It's called A.H. Parker. It has a whole bunch of history to it. It's actually a beautiful high school in Birmingham. But I got a job teaching there, one of my first jobs with my little bachelor's degree. And mind you, my father put me and my sister in a through sacrifice, working at a gas station with a bachelor's degree from University of Alabama. Put us in a PWI, high performing high school that we barely could afford. While I was at this white high school, I saw all kinds of stuff. I mean, I was in honors English or honors lit, whatever it was. And white teacher just teaching her butt off, and bam, the door kicked down by a boot, and an AR-15 goes in the room. A fucking dog just runs up in there and jumps at a girl, a German Shepherd, and SWAT walks up in there with body armor on. My teacher reached for her purse, and the officer pointed a gun and said, "Put your fucking purse. Don't you fucking touch anything." right? As it turns out,
What happened?
um, she just told her best friend that she was going to do it, and her best friend finally caved and told the police, and they sent.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
Made the news. You know, people would kill themselves
Can you hear
there.
me?
You know,
Hello?
in the elevator. Never
Hello?
made the news. One of the band teachers ran away with a young man. Um, Never made the news. You know, band director. Let me say allegedly ran off with a young man. Um, Band director was in his 70s. Young man was 14. Never made the news. So I teach at A.H. Parker, right out of college, in the hood, and down the street from the Angela Davis' house in my old neighborhood. And a little boy lights up a cigarette in the bathroom. Somebody says, "Boy, what you doing?" And he throws a cigarette in the trash can and runs off. The cigarette touches some paper and starts a very small fire in the boy's bathroom. Before we could get outside, the Fox News was out there recording the whole thing. You know, that's manufacturing consent. Come on, Wani.
Can you hear me? Okay, you can't hear me. I'm gonna move it.
Can you hear me, Wani?
No.
Yeah, can you hear Wani? Wani,
Oh, I can't.
drop back down and he'll pull you back up.
Okay.
Can you hear her now,
I don't.
Professor?
Oh, can you hear
Okay,
me?
she's gonna drop down. Yeah, I can hear
Okay.
you and you can hear me, right? Okay, so
Yes,
she's
I
coming
got you.
back up. Right.
Weird.
You were breaking up a bit while you were talking, so you may want to start that whole story over again.
I
Go
Oh,
ahead,
okay.
Wani.
yeah, I could you were breaking up and then I asked you if you could hear me, but you didn't say anything, so I figured you couldn't.
Okay, I'm not gonna move anymore. I moved around my house, but yeah, I'm gonna get a new phone this week, so I don't know what this is about, but yeah, I was just saying that I went to a white high school. I'm gonna shorten it. I went to a white high school and I saw all kind of debaucherous things. Never made the news, and taught at the old high school that I went to before my dad moved us. And a little boy was smoking just a cigarette, a Newport, threw it in the trash can because he was scared, and a little bitty fire started, and the whole news, Fox News, was out front before we even made it outside. They were out there filming and had a big story. It was a fire at Age Parker. That let me know something was up way back then.
You said it was manufactured consent, right?
Yep, manufactured consent is there's an apparatus out here that manufactures our failure. But you know what I think that goes back to? Let's really go deep right quick. Um, Give me a minute. I'm gonna find some scholarship from Dr. Amos Wilson. Amos, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Making sure my thing's not
Yes,
missing.
I can hear you. All right.
Okay. Dr. Amos Wilson, one of my I have a handful of scholars that I just like run back. Welsing is at the top. Wilson is not far from her. But Amos wrote a book years ago where he was trying to figure out were there any type of what educators call individual differences between blacks and whites. And he accidentally found a study done by Gerber that Gerber, like the baby food, they tried to hide it. Gerber in the 80s did a study on foundational Black American kids. We think it had the intent of kind of making fun of Black people. Like, ooh, look at them, they can't do. But what Gerber discovered is Black, and these are American children. These weren't African children. These were foundational Black American children. Had genetic advantages out of their mom. I mean, one of the advantages is on day one, the Black child had her head up and smiled or something, and the Caucasian child wouldn't do that for 9 weeks. Just imagine a 9 week advantage. That's like light
That's a
years
lot
ahead. You know?
for a child, for a baby, infant.
Yeah, and I'm gonna find an article and post it. It's more of that. Um, but Amos used that piece of data, and Gerber tried to hide it. They published it, and bam, I found it. I didn't think I was gonna find it this easy.
Well, it makes think of,
Okay, so
oh, go ahead.
the subtitle of the article is "Comparison of African / European Psychomotor Development." Now he said African, but he was dealing with Black kids. Gerber was dealing with Black kids, and so number two, individual difference at 2 days old, with head held firmly. The Black child looks at the face of the examiner. 2 days old, just you know, looked at like,
Said
"Who
that
are
they
you?"
said African?
Yeah, that's what they said, but the study was done.
What does it say
Who said Africa?
exactly?
It says comparison of African European.
Oh,
That's
okay,
Dr.
I got
Amos
you.
Wilson.
They're using the
That's what he
core. They're acting like we're African because they're dumb and they're in denial. They actually have plenty of studies back in the 40s to say we were um, a quad racial or triracial group. So I don't know why they're trying to play dumb. Well, I do know why.
So the study says at 2 days old, the child holds his head firm and looks at the face of the examiner. The European child doesn't know how to do that until 8 weeks. An 8 week advantage. That's a long time. Number three, 7 weeks old, Black child could support herself in a sitting position and watches her reflection in the mirror. Notices a reflection. The European doesn't do that for 20 weeks.
Have you noticed that they're
Um,
basically dissing themselves? By calling us African, they're saying that their genetics are garbage. It doesn't count.
yeah,
It's
I
funny.
mean, yeah,
One drop of non-white blood, and the rest of it,
make a whole
right?
African.
The rest of it is garbage. It doesn't even count. That's funny.
Yeah,
It's really,
Paul Mooney's
it's really an insult to them.
right. Um, Number four, 5 months old, a Black child can hold herself upright. Um, European can't do that till 9 months. Da, 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 da. Number five, 5 months old standing against the mirror. European 9 months. Number six, 7 months old walking to the gazelle box to look inside the box at 7 months. European don't do that to 15 months. 11-month old Black child climbs up the steps alone. European 15, 16. Yeah, it's differences. And Dr. Amos Wilson used this study to posit why the system immediately attacks Black children. I mean, they used to wait till you made it to school, but now they attack you in the womb, right?
Well, we always have to be
Mm.
slowed down, and then we have to be slowed down even further because we have to go to school with people that don't even speak English. So we're always being drugged backwards, and then and then being supposedly the odd one out. Yeah, we need to go to school with ourselves.
Yeah, that's one of my dreams because that's where the learning begins. That's where where I got my self esteem was around my own people, around Black teachers in middle school.
Now, I was going to mention some stuff about crime and how when Europeans come over, it becomes glamorized. So the mafia comes over here, and for decades, our authorities said they didn't exist, probably because they had naked pictures of them and pictures of them dressed up like women and every other thing. Uh, that's how the mafia was able to uh, be successful and not have any law enforcement chasing them. That is a huge, huge scandal that they just played off. You know, they just played it off. Yeah, they knew the mafia was here. There's a mafia in Italy, so why wouldn't it be here? These people don't change their stripes. They just simply move. There's a Irish mob, there's Russian mobs, there's Armenian mobs, there's Italian mobs, and there's Asian gangs, Caribbean gangs, cartels from south of the border now. Right now, they didn't go away and they're not going to go away. They're going to operate, and then there's going to be these uh, ceremonial, symbolic arrests, and those groups are going to keep right on doing their whatever they're doing, their illegal activities, while we get labeled as the big bad gang members. They literally glamorize these Depression era gangsters: Bonnie and Clyde, Pretty Boy Floyd, John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, the Barrow Gang, Ma Barker, all on and on. They made movies out of them. They glamorize these people, and we haven't done anything like that. We went through all of these poverty-stricken times without doing the things that white people have done, without operating organized crime. We have unorganized gangs, and they don't control anything. They don't have the ability to create drugs or do anything. They can be on, lower level drug dealers, not at the top. The highest that I think we've ever gotten is when we aligned with the mafia here and there to control some of these predominantly black areas, but we have never run a full blown mafia organized crime to make money like these other groups. And this is how these groups improve their situation here in America. This is the only way to do that: bootlegging, mobbing. There's no other way. Hard work is not going to do anything. That is just a lie to keep you from horning in on the bootlegging and the moonshining. People have to cheat to get ahead, and that's where uh, have not cheated to get ahead. We've been following the rules and being on the defensive the whole time. Basically, I just wanted to point out that we live in every state in the union. We're not gang members. A lot of people have been railroaded into prison. However, 94% of Black Americans are not in prison, but no one wants to talk about that. They want to just say we're all in jail when we're not. And they turn a blind eye to these other people going to jail like bulk, in bulk. Like they get arrested 80 at a time in brothels, whole sweeps of brothels related, just picture after picture packed up on top of each other. You don't even see anything like that in an American prostitution situation. They're just scattered and unorganized. We're up against organized brothels, organized gangsters. These are criminals that are international criminals, and they do the same crime everywhere they go. They have the same brothels, the same selling of toddlers, the same identical crime in their home countries. And they have brought it here, and we're still the face of crime. It makes no sense. We have a stellar reputation globally from the 1800s. Military units, and like I said, Tuskegee Airmen, um, our legendary Olympian performances. We have prima ballerinas. We have superstar dancers and entertainers like Josephine Baker. We have opera singers like Leontine Price. We have iconic musicians from Louis Armstrong to the King of Pop. We have built that reputation overseas. And we live in every state, rural areas, suburbs, cities. We are global expats in nearly every country. And we did not bring organized crime. We do not have universal passport bans. We don't have oversight by the United Nations or Interpol. And these other groups cheat. You see, they keep the property values high by not reporting their crimes. And they don't have to. The FBI does not make them have to. And they decriminalize things that they know their people are doing. So they know that people on meth are going to steal from the store. So guess what they do? Prop 47. You can steal up to $900 a day. That's kind of a welfare program. You can steal up to $900 a day and no one's going to come out if the clerk is robbed. She has to call the insurance company, not the police. And the other issue is that they are this hyper focus on whether someone's selling a bootleg DVD on the corner in a black neighborhood, that takes away from them. Because while they're murdering you for selling some cigarettes on the corner, while they're murdering you for having some encounter on the street about a bootleg DVD, some pervert, some pedophile is peeking in the window in a nearby white suburb. That's where you need to be looking. You need to be watching all the peeping toms who are planning to snatch your children into the night. That's where the energy should go. Who cares if somebody is selling some DVDs? They're just going to come out and sell it tomorrow anyway. But what you can do is cruise through those suburban neighborhoods and watch to see who's at the back window, who's trying to open the sliding glass door. These are literal crimes that could be committed by patrolling versus harassing people in the street over little petty things that are nonviolent. I think snatching Polly Klaas into the night was very violent. It was violent and it was hurtful to the whole country to hear about a young girl snatched out of her bedroom window. That could be prevented. But do you think anyone would be patrolling up in Lily Whitesville? Nope. Because they're too busy worrying about what some black guy is doing with some marijuana residue in his pockets. So they're harming themselves. Like I said, it's no big deal to shoot yourself in the foot as long as you can get a black American. They'll shoot themselves in the foot. They'll spend trillions of dollars on racism. They'll spend trillions of dollars in lawsuits. They don't mind.
Wani, they just shot somebody in the head over hopping the train, Wani, and then what makes it worse, the police shot at the man, ain't hit him, shot somebody else in the head, shot a bystander in the head, and now he brain
New
dead.
York? In New York?
Factonomics. They hop at all the major train stations, the 14th streets and the 34th streets. All the protesters is jumping over the turnstiles and shit, wilding right now because of that.
What happened?
Somebody else tried to jump the turnstile, beat the fare, try to not pay and all that. The police was there. The police shot at the guy, didn't hit him, and shot a bystander in the head.
Oh no. They're
Oh my
shooting them?
Don't
gosh.
they know how to aim? Don't they get trained on how to aim their guns?
Did he have to
They
shoot at
shoot
him?
at you for that?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they shouldn't have shot in the first place. I said, don't they know how to aim? They shouldn't have
Yeah,
shot
what is
in the
wrong
first
with
place.
them? They're
Yeah.
losing their minds and they're shooting at the wrong people. That's not the people you should shoot at. How about the people with the knives running around New York? Why don't you shoot at them?
And we know who the people are with the knives running around New York. We both know, we all know on the stage who the people are with the knives.
Machetes, even. Unbelievable. But they want to, again, like I just said, they focus on these petty crimes that are not harming anyone, using lethal force, choking people to death, kneeling on people's necks, shooting
And his
people
trials this
over.
week. That dude trials this week, the one from the train station, in the train. His trial this week. They've been covering up his trials this week also. The picnic guy, the one who's choking the guy on the train, him, his trials this week here in New York too.
Unbelievable. And In addition,
Did you say pick me?
mhm.
Did you say the pick me guy?
Yeah, yeah.
Who's-
Fish and grits.
is that his name?
Okay.
His last name, I think it's Daniel or some shit, but the guy's name started with a P or whatever the fuck his name. I know it's a D and I think his name started with a P. I remember the guy who was choking the man on the train, the Michael Jackson on the train.
Okay. So back to what I was saying. They do hyper focus on the disorganized crime in American neighborhoods, predominantly in Black neighborhoods. They are hyper focused on that and they ignore all of the other crime. They literally don't list it. The FBI listed 0 murders in Newtown, Connecticut. 0. Well, really? Uh, and in addition to that, now we have to absorb illegal crime. So people that come over here illegally, anybody with brown skin, they were calling them Black Americans. We've been putting up with that for years. Anybody over here with brown skin is a Black American until we stood up and said, no, we're not. Now they are labeling people African immigrants, Haitian immigrants. You're not going to accuse us of doing all these things that we're not doing. I remember the media was showing violent images of so-called Black and Asian people fighting in a nail shop. And then the nail shop got shut down. The people were running around fighting. When they all showed up in the court, everybody had an accent. There were no there were no Black Americans involved in that. Similar to the Crown Heights riot. Um, again, our politicians came out and said, we've got to make sure Black Americans are getting along with the Jews okay. Really? We weren't there. We have nothing to do with it. Crown Heights was an issue where a Jewish man ran over 2 South American children, last name Cato, Cato, um, not Black American, and they killed the little boy and critically injured his cousin, and they were under the car, dying and one dead. So the Jewish people called the ambulance, which was just for Jewish people. And the drivers the people in the car got into the Jewish ambulance and left the children under the car. Okay? So obviously, the optics of that were infuriating, and a lot of Caribbeans and South Americans ran around Crown Heights wanting revenge, which they got on an unrelated Jewish guy who was just walking down the street that had nothing to do with that crime. But the point of the issue is that that person that killed the Jewish guy was a Trinidadian immigrant that was not had nothing to do with Black Americans, and the children were South American that identified as Caribbean. I'm not 100% sure how that works, but it does. And it had nothing to do with Black Americans, and we were blamed for a riot.
Exactly. Yeah, we're gonna absorb the crime. That's what I was waiting on you to say. Wow.
Of course, I can name other things. East Africans have come over here and imported all of their gangs, uh, Somali hot boys, Somali mafia, Mahatman with attitude, um, all of these things. And yes, the public knows that they're not Black Americans. Nobody's stupid here. However, when it goes down in the record books, they are considered Black. And this is a very racist structure that we must viciously fight against with all of our might. We're not to be confused with or paired off with any of these people. And I don't care if white people say, well, we have to absorb the Boston Marathon bombers. They're considered white. I don't care what you're absorbing. You're not at a disadvantage in this propaganda game that's been going on since the beginnings of America, minstrel shows, everything done to make us look bad. And we need to have our own propaganda so we can fight against it, because I have more facts against white people if we want to do that. I have more facts against them than they have against me. Their crime, their numbers. See, we can pick and choose crimes. We can say, oh, we want to talk about gangs. Well, what if I want to talk about familicide? What if I want to talk about images of children on your laptops? What if I want to pick and choose crimes to talk about and big up, while you want to talk about that one statistic in Chicago, which you match in your own gangs, in your own Hell's Angel gangs, where people get killed and disappear and you never find them 20 years later. They have a lot of crime within biker gangs. So they need to really stop.
Hey, isn't there a whole show dedicated to white people and their pedophilia and finding goddamn all that on their laptops like fictionally? Ain't it Law and Order SVU and shit? Ain't that the whole show premise about that one?
I don't know. I don't think I've heard that one. Anybody know?
Yeah, the SBU is Special Victims Unit, but it covers a lot of different special
Every
stuff.
time I watch that
Yeah,
shit,
but
they catching some white man with goddamn pouring inside the encrypted files and shit. Every time I watch that shit, every time I watch it, I thought that was for them.
yeah, well, that's who's mainly doing it.
Well, you're going to see these shows that are catching people trying to hook up on dates with 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds. And it,
To watch that when I was in college. It's called To Catch a Predator, and man, it's
yes.
so interesting. I used to love to watch that show because the dude on there would be like, that the defendant would walk in the house and they would have like somebody pretending to
Would
be
you
a
like some
child,
cookies? There's some lemonade on the
and,
counter.
and then he turns the light
Y'all,
on and
nah, y'all thinking it's To Catch a Predator. That's they had to stop that junk because they kept catching politicians
yes,
and shit.
Yeah,
yes.
they did have to stop it.
Remember one of the
Woo!
politicians? No, he was a
Oh boy.
judge or a lawyer or some shit like that. But he got caught and he killed himself, and, and that's
Oh
why they
Yes, he
wow.
stopped that
did.
shit. It was exposing a lot of them.
Absolutely.
Shout out Chris Hansen.
Bro, they got a special ed teacher one day, a friggin' a we call it sped, but
Red teacher,
special
man,
ed
that's
teacher
cold
was
blooded. So there don't no telling what he was doing to them kids, and they're not knowing that it's not right. That
hello.
filthy work. Shout out Chris Hansen though.
And dude, oh yeah, it was good work, man. And then it was so smooth. They turn the lights on. He'd be sitting on the couch. He'd be like, "Hey, how you doing?"
But have a seat. Either have a
Gotcha.
seat right here. Start tapping on the counter. I remember one white dude. He got away. He boogied. They caught him like 3 blocks down though.
Full camera crew inside the house, man. That show was tough, man.
Motherfucker showed with a pizza and a box of rubbers. Crazy.
I didn't know that somebody killed himself. I wondered where the show went.
Yeah, Google it. I'm trying. I keep forgetting. I'm not sure was it a judge, lawyer, or it was somebody. He was high ranking official. Just Google what happened to catch a predator. It'll tell you the whole story.
Jamal, what are your thoughts? Can you hear me, Jamal?
Oh, I see him now. Go ahead and speak, Jamal. Jamal, are you there?
It's telling me I'm a listener.
Jamal.
Y'all can hear me?
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, I hear
Oh,
you,
okay,
bro.
yeah, we
okay. I
can.
didn't even. It's telling me I'm a listener the whole time. I was
Yeah,
just
this
trying
Did
to.
you
Space
mean
Jam.
to?
I was just trying to tell y'all this. I put it in the purple pill. The suicide of Bill Conrad. That's the guy who killed himself. I just put a little screenshot in there.
Did you put it in the purple
Yeah,
pill?
Yeah, Bill Conrad, that's his name.
Okay, I'll go find it.
Yeah, it was a very interesting show. Where'd we leave off, Wani?
I was speaking about crime. You took a segue over to crime.
Crime. Hmm. What do I have on crime? Well, I will say that it's interesting how the standards of law tend to see different things, have a double standard when it pertains to foundational Black Americans. How um, one thing, there's one standard for us and one standard for other groups. It's very fascinating.
And it's giving mixed signals as well because we know the facts. We know that we don't have a problem where we're committing international crime and all of those things. We don't have our passports banned. We know the facts, and yet we are just plagued with people just pulling up the same skewed statistics over and over that make them look good. All of their little suburban neighborhoods, they don't count the crime there. Many horrible crimes, they don't even count them.
Yeah, I my third year in law school, I've said this before. I worked for an amazing judge. Her name was Helen Shores Lee, and her dad was very famous. His name was Arthur Shores. I don't know if y'all know about Arthur, but Arthur was the first Black attorney in Alabama. But anyway, just long lineage and just a fabulously wise woman, wise human being that I soaked up a lot of game from Helen. But yeah, she passed a couple years ago. But um, I my third year law school, I got an internship where I got to sit on a grand jury. I was interested in working criminal stuff, or I thought I was from watching TV and stuff. Plus, my crim law professor was the most interesting alcoholic I've ever met in my life. So I said, I could do that. Well, I sat on a grand jury. I'm not going to say the district attorney's name, but this district attorney was deciding. Basically, a grand jury is when people have been charged. The district attorney and the grand jury, which sounds fancy, but it's just a group of people, decide if they're going to bill or no bill the crime. So here they are. They had like about 10 people, um, horrendous crimes. One guy allegedly brutally murdered his girlfriend. It was bad. They had evidence. A lot of that stuff wasn't even questionable. But what I saw that day changed my life forever. Like I saw when this DA, district attorney, said would call out the name of the suspects who were, non-black. I saw the grand jury no bill them. No bill means like we're gonna forget about it, just throw it away, let them walk. And when they got to this young man, he had to been like 19 or something. Um, it was a horrendous crime. You know, they said bill, and one of the dudes on the grand jury was a black dude. So I saw how racialized the criminal law process is. You know what I'm saying? You had evidence, you could have just billed everybody, send them all to jail. Nope. You know, but we're gonna get the black dude. We're gonna bill him. We're gonna charge him with everything, and it's we live in a real interesting country. With a very interesting history. My aunt June used to say, "Justice, Lady Justice, be peeking under that blindfold." That's just how she used to put it. She said
I
she be
agree.
peeking.
So, would you like to read about the global caste system, which we have shunned? We don't seem to fit in with anybody in the world. which is really which makes people dislike us a lot. Um, I'm going to give you.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, Dr. Claude Anderson was right when he said we're an exceptional people. We're exceptional. We don't fit in. You try to throw the most horrendous slime of task at us, like, hey, I know you got the 13th Amendment, but I'm gonna use it. Ha ha, jokes on you, to build a railroad, and then we for free, and we go build a railroad and give them a soundtrack with it. Who does that? We're magical.
We really are. And I'm going to read off the global caste system and see if anyone can give their input and see if they disagree. So the way it goes is West Africans and Caribbeans submit to Afro-Asiatic, East Africans, Arabs, Europeans, Asians, Indians, Hispanics, and Russians. So when those people speak, the other groups bow down to, they submit and they don't fight. And then when East Africans are confronted with Arabs, Europeans, Asians, Indians, Hispanics, and Russians, they submit to those groups. They do whatever those groups say. They step back. They feel, and I don't know where they've come up with these attitudes, but this is deeply ingrained in these people. So you can go into some of their rooms, and if they decide to have a West African versus East African, the West Africans lose all the time. They just submit. They don't even try. They know that they are below them for some reason that they have in their head. And I don't know exactly what that is, but they have it all worked out. The other observation is that Asians slash Indians, they submit to Arabs, Europeans, even Hispanics and Russians. And we see that played out here in, there are a lot of Asian, Hispanic uh, neighborhoods. And so there's a little bit of tension there because the Asians feel that they are better than the Hispanics in a way, and the Hispanics feel like they are better than Asians in a way. They're physically uh, able to fight Asians better, but Asians feel that they're superior mentally. So they have a little bit of back and forth going on that. But the Asians and Indians, while they do all this submission to the other groups that I named, the Arabs, Europeans, Hispanics, and Russians, if they were to come into contact with them, they identify as people of color if some group gets in on them. So if somebody really starts going hard on them, like during COVID, then all of a sudden they become people of color. Other than that, they align with the European descent power structure, and they don't have any problem uh, trying to be model minorities. When you run down on that same thing, Arabs and Israelis submit to Europeans and Russians. And again, in times of peace, they claim European status. But when they get into trouble, as you can see, both groups claim people of color status to get sympathy. So they can come over here, they can call the police on George Floyd, get him killed, and act like a white supremacist. And then they can be over on the Gaza Strip being murdered and genocided and say, hey, we're black. Why aren't black people helping us? We're of African descent, you know, and the Israelis are white. When someone gets in on the Israelis, when they're not being white supremacists to us and anyone around them, like they're doing now, they will claim people of color status, get all kinds of hate crime bills and words to protect them, and they will claim they're not white. That's literally in one of the bills that was proposed, that they are not white, that they are a people of color status, and they want to be protected based on not being white, which, like, what? How are you a white supremacist in one country and a person of color that needs to be protected in another? So we can see that's a grift. Now, some of these other groups, Native Americans, Pacific Islanders, they submit to Europeans and try to go along with the, European power structures as well. They go along with it, but when someone gets in on them, someone starts running up on them, all of them are people of color all of a sudden. But they will run around and align with, try to be model minorities and align with everybody that would go against us. Now, on the flip side, not totally the flip side, Australian natives and Northern Hemisphere Inuits, they submit to Europeans. There's no doubt about that. They do. They were beaten by Europeans and marginalized. They can't even live where they used to live. But they kind of avoid, they just avoid them like, yeah. They don't like try to be model minorities to that extent. They are aware that they've been marginalized and they have taken a different type of attitude toward them, more like avoidance. We'll be friendly with you. Okay, hi guy, but well, I'm not hanging out with you like that. I want to be in my own little area. Leave me alone.
Do you think that comes from them being shunned into like the country, into the way far outs of everybody else? They were
Yes,
told, they were sent away.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
Maybe they were made to feel like they were supposed to hide. Maybe they were made to feel ashamed or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, they took their kids. Didn't they take their children and
Mm-hmm.
put them in white
Mm-hmm.
households and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do.
So maybe they were made to feel like they were outcasts or something like that. And that became culture.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been very enamored by Australian native history. And there's always been something very unique about those people that puts the puzzle together. Something about Australia and their native people. Don't you agree, Professor?
Well, yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's very fascinating. Well, mainly because when Captain Oglethorpe, James Oglethorpe in Britain, came up with the plan to keep us in check by sending criminals, pedophiles, degenerates, not my words, words of academic canon, to the Georgia Corporation. I mean, the state of Georgia was literally created to keep Negroes and Indians in control. Soak that in for a second. They sent the worst, I repeat, the worst of the pedophiles, degenerates, and sociopath, psychopath class was sent to Australia. So they literally got the first batch of fucking nuts, crazy, murdering lunatics. And that may be that look and that brokenness that our dear sister Wani. I haven't went to Australia yet. I'm going pretty soon, but that may be the brokenness that Wani always speaks about. Is they got um, the worst of that group. So this is going to be hard to hear, but this will illustrate how bad this group was. So I've read years ago that the lunatics of the sent to Australia and Tasmania would first they would castrate the men and castrate the men. They had no weapons, and they would gamble and bet. They would cast bets on who would bleed to death the quicker. So the women had to see that. Secondly, the name of this game of white domination is simply is brutal, but it's simple. You kill all the men, all of them, even the little boys, and you let the women stick around. And like our sister Wani said, you rape the women to create a confused class of weaponized mixed babies. Nobody talks about that enough. Mixing race can be weapon. Um, but in the case of Australia, they would. This is gonna be hard to hear, but after they castrated the men and gambled on who would bleed to death the longest, generally it takes 5 minutes to bleed to death that way, from what I read. That's a long fucking 5 minutes, but I digress. They would bury the male children, male infants, head first in the sand and have a competition on who could kick their head off the furthest. These were absolute fucking lunatics. And the trauma, I surmise, was so immense, so great, that to this day they're just kind of catatonic. Just maybe they beat they in a way destroyed a sense of hope. You know,
They don't have. They definitely don't have the same Ojara spirit that we have.
their spirit was
No, they don't.
destroyed or broken.
And they see someone like me and they do reach out. Um, the Inuits and in the Northern Hemisphere and in Australia, they do reach out and they do say, um, they see me as a kindred spirit when they know I'm a Black American. Especially the Australian natives, they'll say, "Well, we're black fellas, aren't we? We're just black fellas, and we have to deal with it." But it is a different way of dealing with the same stimuli. We'll say we have a different way, and they have a different way, and they feed off of our way. That's why they definitely had the Pacific Island Panthers, but they had one in Australia too, a Black Panthers type organization. We've inspired a lot of Black Panthers organizations that we don't know about too. But the last two people on this global caste system are Russians. Russians don't submit to anybody. They're just like head to head with people of European descent. They don't.
They're fearless.
Right. They won't buckle under and, get in the group.
They're kept they're kept away from us. I'm looking into something. It's something strange about them. They are kept away from us. It is said that Black Americans don't have a problem learning Russian. We pick it up real fast. I think the Russian language was created by Alexander Pushkin, and he was allegedly a black of African descent, maybe
Mm-hmm.
mixed, but
Mulatto.
mulatto. Well, the Russians were the first target of the plan that Albert Pike aligns in his book Morals and Dogma of World Domination, for the reason being that they were stubborn and fearless. I don't know. In some way, I feel like I'm just going to say there's something hidden between the Black American and the Russian. Some scholars argue that Black Americans got as far as we did. Well, not just one of the reasons we got as far as we did during the civil rights movement is because Russia, during the Cold War, Russia was applying a counter pressure to the white system of white supremacy in America, and it benefited us in a way. And some scholars like Jordan Peterson says that if you look at the epoch of time, when the Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War was over, that's when we had an acceleration of neoliberalism and hidden racism in America, because that counterbalance of, oh well, we can't really pay too much close attention to the Negroes because we got to worry about the Russians, that type of thing. Once Russia, the USSR fell, you can track that to the acceleration of the Hillary Clintons and the crime bills, and they had just simply the system of white supremacy had more leisure time to focus on destroying us. So in conclusion, the Russians, in a strange way, kind of benefited us. Plus, if you look through Russian history, those are some classy people. Read Anton Chekhov's Three Sisters. They were very aristocratic people. They shared that with foundational Black Americans. We're debonair and classy, concerned with dignity and class. The old Russia, before it was replaced with the communist system, had that type of mantra of class and tradition and duty. And now, something real interesting I found out not too long ago. Now, I read Morals and Dogma, where they said the Russians, in order for world domination, you got to get rid of the Russian oligarchy, because it basically, in all just in all simplicity, they're too dignified. You know, they were gonna basically the Russian oligarchy was gonna see a world conspiracy and say, fuck it. Like Wani said, we're gonna die to protect the honor of the world. We're made to die. Let's do this fearlessly. What was the Russian oligarchy replaced with? Communism. Uh-oh, that's an ism. What I say, those ISMs came out of Germany, came out of Nazi fucking seances. Never forget that Adolf Hitler was a male prostitute who rose to his power by joining an occult group. Um, and a lot of the, I got a piece of textual evidence that shows that he was a damn, yeah, he was a hooker.
Did you know what
Now, I don't
type
know.
of prostitute he was? Was he like the girl in the group? Because I heard some other things about him.
It doesn't say. The scholarship says that he was served as a male prostitute. Um, I could imagine. I don't see. I don't know. I have my theories, but the scholarship just identifies him as a. Basically, he went to University of Vienna, balls to the wall, like I'm gonna get accepted. I'm going there, and they rejected him twice. He didn't have bus fare to make it back home, and he didn't want to do the walk of shame. So he started slanging that thing, and doing what he had to do to survive, and that's well documented. And while he was, to quote one, no, I'm not gonna say that. Oh,
You already said slanging that thing, and now go ahead and finish
What
talking.
thing?
Just finish it up.
We don't know what a thing is, though.
one of my students said, "Dr. A, was he slanging pussy?" I didn't answer the question, but it was one of them where I laughed inside, internally. I didn't laugh externally. But I don't know. He was a prostitute. Maybe, just to be fair, maybe he was servicing lonely German women,
I,
but
I
I
heard he
doubt it.
didn't have the proper tools to do that.
Ooh. Well, while he was, slanging, he met with an occultist and they apparently liked his product and he rose real high in the occult. I mean, the shit gets really weird. Do y'all want to know what happened after he met the occultist and joined Novo Ordo Templi, which translates to the New Order of Templars. There they go again. Same groups keep popping up over and over again, don't they? Hitler, was approached by a head occultist. The name escapes me, but I'm sure a quick Google search will find out who that person was. And then this occultist told him if he wanted to rise to power, I mean, some straight Harry Potter shit. He was advised Hitler to go to his neighborhood and find a mandrake. Y'all know what a mandrake is? A mandrake is a plant that looks like a man. This is some Harry Potter shit that really happened. How do I know it really happened and I'm just not capping? Well, one of the newspapers did an article on it. I'm gonna find it right quick. Hitler mandrake. Why did the newspaper do a article on Hitler and his mandrake? Because he was advised by his newly found occult friend to wear the mandrake around his neck, which he did. And the newspaper said, "Why in the hell is this dude walking around with a plant around his neck?" Hitler mandrake. I'm looking for it. Stand by. Hit images. There it is. I found it.
Mandrake?
I found the article where Hitler's walking around with a damn plant that looks like a person. And
Whoa.
people are like, yeah, I mean, the shit gets weirder and weirder and weirder. So Hitler was kind of rising to power. People laughed him on the old Ancien regime, laughed at him. He was asked to walk around with a mandrake with a, what do you call it, an affirmation, like a spell in a tube, a spell that was written in a tube by the mandrake. He walked around with that on his neck like a necklace. People thought he was crazy and then a motherfucker and kind of stayed out his way. Well, one day at the at the I'm gonna call it the parliament, but I forget the name of it. That burned down, out the blue, the it was said that the brown shirts burnt the building down, but nobody knows how it burnt down. The like the area, I forgot the name of it, but it was like Parliament, burnt to the fucking ground, and out of the ashes rose a leader named Adolf Hitler. It was said to be done with some ancient spell. You have to understand that all of these, like I said, these Nazi scientists were involved with shit that we didn't understand. In law school, they call it a fruit of a poisonous tree. These folks was in the devil worshiping shit. All these rockets and stuff came from somewhere we didn't quite
Hmm.
understand, but America wanted it. And it is my opinion that when we accepted these people into my home state, the great state of Alabama, we accepted the poison that came along with this shit. I'm about to post Hitler's Mandrake in the Jumbotron.
Yeah, we accepted them. They were war criminals that should have been hung, but we wanted that technology that they got from reverse engineering things that we're not supposed to talk about.
Yeah, those. Check that out. Look at that article. He's walking around with some Harry Potter shit, just shaking hands.
It sure was. I mean, I looked at it. I never even heard that before, but I wanted to give people an idea of the what Russians are, because when you go to some of these places like Russia and Central Asia, you see some features that you're not used to seeing. Um, you'll see people that look like they're, I guess you could say Chinese, but they have blonde hair and blue eyes. And you'll see a lot of combos like that. So Russian people are Slavic. Um, they're also Tartars, which are a group that came from Mongol invaders. Now, you know who else was Tartar? Charles Bronson.
I believe
He
it.
was Tartar. And
He looked
yeah,
Asian.
he was. And the other group are indigenous peoples of Russia, Siberian type people. So that's why they have such an interesting look. And they've been doing a lot of traveling and crossroad stuff. And they also used to control Central Asia. So all those stands, Uzbekistan, um, Tajikistan, and all that area, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. These areas have a very strong Russian influence. So they're an interesting group of people, and they're not just white people, so to speak, and they don't submit to Europeans. They don't do it, and that's why. That's a part of why they have that attitude. They're just not going to buckle under. Now, the last group,
I love their spirit. I went to high school. He passed, got in a car accident, but I went to high school with a Russian named Rusty. And man, and I got a student right now that's of that descent. They it's something about them, man. Like you say, they're not scared. They're fearless.
and the last group that doesn't submit to anyone is Black Americans. And we have been going head to head with white supremacy the whole time. And the other ethnicities that immigrate over here, they are very confused by us. And so they immediately tell us that we need to, you know, submit. We're not doing it right. You guys are wrong. You have to let the police murder you. You can't resist. You can't talk about your rights. You have to just go lay down. These other ethnicities want us to be on the bottom where West Africans have placed themselves. Like I said at the beginning of the list, they submit to everybody. So they come here and they want to argue and fuss with us because we're not doing it right.
Preach.
And that's where we're getting a lot of the anger and resistance, and they're trying to throw monkey wrenches and everything to get everything back on track because we're going against the global caste system. They want to get everything on track. They want to get in front of the helm of reparations so they can steer the ship down like the Titanic. They have to get on these boards. It is part of their genetics to take us down. We must be on the bottom. We are going against the grain. We are going against the global caste system. And the reason we're doing that is because we're not part of the global caste system. We rejected it. We
Preach.
have paid our dues to these people. We don't owe anyone on this earth, and we don't have the nasty backgrounds that the people trying to boss us around and tell us what to do have. We get to make the choices that we're going to make. We get to sculpt our own path. We're a new group, a new ethnicity with ancient ties. This
We are karmatically
That's
clean.
right. And we don't have to absorb any of these people's crimes, and we don't have to buckle down to their old, dilapidated caste systems. We refuse to uh, bow down to those caste systems. So I guess we stand with Russians in this case.
So, Wani, when you said that, you made me think of the origin of this ideology. Well, one of the origins of this ideology. I don't be codified because I don't want to get in trouble with a certain group that tend to run academia. You know what I mean? Um, what Wani made me think of, Isabella Wilkerson clearly outlined in her book Caste. Um, she says, quote, every year on the Day of Atonement, the ancient Hebrews took two male goats and presented them before the Lord. Now, the Lord I did studying, I found was not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or God the Father, but somebody else, but I'm going to let it go for now. At the end, quote, at the entrance to the tent of meeting, then the high priest cast lots to determine the fate of each goat. Got it? She also says one they would kill as a sacrifice to the Lord. I'm gonna leave that alone. To cleanse and make sacred the sanctuary. The other, the scapegoat. You get it? The one they let escape. They would present to the Lord alive. The high priest would lay both hands on the head of the live goat and confess upon its head the guilt and misdeeds of all of the Israelites. All of their sins he would transpose to the goat, and the goat was then banished to the wilderness, carrying on its back the weight of the faults of the Israelites, excuse me, and thus freeing the Israelis to flourish in peace. The goat was cast out to suffer the sins of others and was called the scapegoat. Ladies and gentlemen, the black American was intended to be a scapegoat, literally. And if you think back hundreds of years, that's the fucking fact pattern. Don't one of us always get killed and sacrificed? And the other scapegoat is collectively represented by the rest of us. Get it? Trayvon Martin gets gunned down the street, and we're the goat who ran away, right? Isabel Wilkerson further says in a caste system, whether in the United States or India, in World War II Germany, the lowest caste performed the unwitting role of diverting society's attention from its structural ills and taking the blame for the collective misfortune. It was seen, in fact, a misfortune itself. Don't it feel like that? What did Fannie Lou Hamer say? I'm so tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's a misfortune, ain't it? Wilkerson further says, quote, thus the scapegoat unwittingly helps unify the favorite caste to be seen as free of blemish as long as there's a visible disfavored group to absorb their sins. Black Americans, that's what the fuck we've been doing, is absorbing the sins of a peasant class of people who's came over here to try to act royal. I'm sick of it, actually, but back to the script. Isabella further says scapegoating, as currently practiced, Perea wrote, means finding the one or ones who can be identified with the evil or wrongdoing, blamed for it, and cast out of the community in order to leave the remaining members with a feeling of guiltlessness. Drive to the rich part of town and watch how people walk. Me and my undergrads did that one day, so I could really drive home the concept of scapegoating. What did Isabella say? Leave the dominant cast with a feeling of guiltlessness. You can tell guilt by the way people walk. Heaviness, right? So we did a field trip. One day we skipped class and we went to the South Memphis, um, which is kind of like the hood. That's where Young Dolph got shot. I love South Memphis. I rock with it. I'm a hood cat. I dress real nice, but I'm a hood cat from back Birmingham back in the day. Can't shake it. I'm not ashamed of it. And we just watched. And we saw our brothers and sisters walking, going to work, whether it's for the factory, or going to Popeyes, going to churches to work, or our sisters who were working on the corner. We didn't judge. It was a sense of heaviness. Like, oh my God, even us, we were like, man, I feel heavy, you know. Then we went to Germantown, the rich part of town, ate at Chick-fil-A and watched them. They walked around with a feeling of guiltlessness. They were light on their feet. It's almost like the hills were alive, were playing as they walked their dog or walked their Nikes. But the question was, these houses cost $500,000, $600,000 a pop. Where in the fuck do you work? Do you work at all? We were being scapegoated, ladies and gentlemen. A scapegoat, quote, a scapegoat has become necessary for the collective well-being of the caste above it and the smooth functioning of the caste system. The dominant groups can look to those cast out as the cause or any fate or misfortune. It's the blacks' fault, quote, as representing the worst aspects of society. That's why Sexy Red is important, because she perpetuates this ideology. You see, black women look like that. And last but not least, quote, the scapegoat feels relief in being lighter. Sexy Red versus Taylor Swift, right? And I'm not picking on Sexy Red. We can say Meg the Stallion. Why is Meg the Stallion dressed like that as opposed to Taylor Swift being dressed like that? Taylor Swift is lighter. She's lighter on her feet. Is she a nicer person? No. Meg the Stallion is scapegoated. I'll land my plane.
I wanted to run over some of the things. I think a lot of people don't know how um, we created a political system for ourselves here in America to defend ourselves within this country and to represent us as well. But everything that we built has been shifted over to global concerns. And the mere idea that we would ask for reparations, it's like, you can't do that. We're in the middle of talking about immigration, you know, deportation, international disasters, natural disasters, rather. Honor killings are being addressed here in our Congress and with the Congressional Black Caucus. They address these things. Female genital mutilation is being addressed. Police brutality in Nigeria has been addressed by us. Okay? SARS, Boko Haram has been addressed by us. Bring the Girls Home campaign. Child brides have been addressed here in the United States of America using our resources. And they don't have time to talk about President Lincoln's desire for that Field Orders 15, a settlement program for Black Americans. They don't want to talk about it. So I'm going to read some of the things from the Congressional Black Caucus, lifting up the voices of Black immigrants. Congressional Black Caucus 2022. Here's some more. Immigration reform. That was a article from 2019. Here's another one. Exclusive. Two Black Caucus members call on DHS to stop expulsions to Haiti. That's some more energy from us. Okay, another one. U.S. Congressional Black Caucus to protest Israel's deportation of African asylum seekers. So not only are you fighting to keep Africans here, but you have literally projected yourself over into other countries to make them keep Africans. Okay? Oh, what about Americans? You can't do all that. You've literally been hijacked by another group. You can't manage Africans. That's impossible. You know how many Africans are? 1.3 billion people being managed by a bunch of buffoons calling themselves the Congressional Black Caucus. Really? And they may have had some wins with helping to topple apartheid, but You have no ability to manage everybody in Africa and all, not just Africa, but everywhere. Here's another article. Congressional Black Caucus demands halt to deportation of Cameroonian immigrants. 2020. Natural disasters. Congressional Black Caucus wants long term support, U.S. support for Haiti. There's another one. Expressing a sense of the Congress regarding so called honor killings. Oh, what? We don't do that. Does anyone's father shoot him in the head for dating a Christian boy? Nope. That's not our problem. We don't get murdered for dating people from other religions or wearing a tube top. We might get yelled at and we might get the side eye, but we don't get murdered.
Kicked out at this.
Here's another one. HR 6100, FGM, female genital mutilation. Hello? We don't we don't do female genital mutilation. Why are we talking about this? Why is this garbage, trash, filth, human waste been dumped into the Congressional Black Caucus when they should be dealing with homelessness, reparations, and a black agenda in general? Another thing, here's some
Preach.
more. Congressional Black Caucus sends a letter to the president of Nigeria. Why? Why? R.E. SARS, you're going to help this African country with their corrupt police. Is that what we're doing? Your dumbass, that's a compliment. Your dumbass is going to help Nigeria with their police problem. You filthy fools. What is wrong with the inside of your brain? Okay, let's go into some more buffoonery. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus call for an immediate executive action to eradicate Boko Haram. How about Nigeria do that? What are they doing? I don't understand. Make me understand. Why would we be burning up our energy talking about these people who can never heal themselves ever for the rest of my life and for the rest of everybody's life here? Africa will always be corrupt and it's never going to heal. All you can do is try to carve out some place in it and keep everybody out. And carve out a place for yourself if you must, and ban everybody because they're never going to let you live in peace. Here's another one. HR 1606, end forced child marriages. Oh, really? Don't we have a law for that? It's called you're a pedophile. Oh no, this is for their culture. Their culture is different than pedophilia, so we have to talk about that while people lay in the street dying of homelessness. Here's another one. The future of Homeland Security, addressing the rise of terrorism in Africa. What? How are we supposed to address terrorism in Africa? Why? Why are we doing that? We, not even terrorism here? You're just way over there addressing it. Okay. Here's another one. House hearing 118 Congress. Efforts to address ritual abuse and sacrifice in Africa. Huh? We have to deal with human sacrifice now? Is that what we're doing? Ritual abuse and sacrifice. That's what the Congress is doing. That's what they're doing there, and that's what they're doing here. Because people are here sacrificing animals and people. Here's another one. Minnesota stops the deadly introduction of bushmeat in the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Okay, so lots of bushmeat coming in through Minnesota. I don't know why. I think we do know.
Ill no more.
Yeah, and the rest of it, it goes on and on and on. That is what the government is doing. with our tax dollars. That is where the Congressional Black Caucus is hyper focused, but not just them, not just the Congressional Black Caucus. Yeah, they're a completely useless tool, but the other parts of our government as a whole are also doing it. And they have these people over here doing every manner of things. And when they do these things, it does not count as the same crime that you and I are doing. So if an African goes on a rampage with a machete, he's just going, oh, well, that's his culture. You got on his nerves at the train station. But if I do it, I'm going to be locked down for 20 years. So they have a two-tier justice system, which is being implemented globally as well. So they can do the most heinous crimes against children and women, and they'll say, well, that's their culture. They can't help it. They don't know any better. But if you or I do it, we're going under the jail for 1/10 of what they are doing.
Yeah, the leadership of America is had abandoned us when I was a child in the 90s. And again, and let's look at some patterns. The president who abandoned us was considered the first black American president, named Bill Clinton. According to Professor Christopher Hedges of Princeton University, former Princeton, now at Rutgers, says Clinton, when he signed into law the North American Free Trade Agreement, promised, that's called NAFTA, NAFTA, he promised NAFTA means jobs, American jobs, and good paying American jobs. George W. justified the invasion of Iraq because Saddam Hussein supposedly possessed weapons of mass destruction. But Clinton did not continue to pretend that NAFTA was beneficial to the working class when reality proved otherwise. Bush did not pretend that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction once none were found. The permanent lie is not circumscribed by reality. It is perpetuated even in the face of overwhelming evidence that discredits it. It is irrational. Those who speak in the language of truth and face fact are attacked as liars. Wani, that would be you and me. We're speaking in the language of truth, so surely we're telling a lie. Traitors and purveyors of fake news, they are banished from public spheres once totalitarian elites accrue sufficient power, a power now granted to them with the revoking of net neutrality. The iron refusal by those to engage in permanent lies to acknowledge reality, no matter how transparent reality becomes, creates a collective psychosis, which I've been saying the whole time. Last but not least, the result of consistent and total substitution of lies for factual truth is not that the lie will now be accepted as truth and truth defamed as a lie, but that the sense by which we take our bearings in real world and the category of truth versus falsehood is amongst the mental means to this end is being destroyed. Hannah Arendt wrote that. We're in that zone right now of the permanent lie, but the permanent lie is buttressed by these electronic hallucinations that we have called social media. People look you in the eye and tell you you should be concerned about bush meat, the quality of bush meat in the Sudan. That's a real American concern. Not, I'm concerned about, are my kids gonna have a job? You know what I'm saying? Or am I gonna be able to afford a mortgage? You know what I'm saying? We were sold out, Wani. I think NAFTA was like the nail in the last nail in the coffin. But the only thing that mattered was Clinton was black, right? He played that saxophone real nice.
Yes. Saxophones, hot sauce, bathing in collard greens.
Collard greens in a bathtub, that type of thing.
Yes.
Spectacle is dangerous. It's all funny, but it is dangerous because looking through the lens of history, you can track the end of empire by spectacle. What am I saying? Like Chris said, the permanent lie comes out. How does a permanent lie exist? It exists because um, the members of the empire, the people, are stuck with these false images of grandeur. In Rome, it was I forget the Latin name for it, but the English translation was bread and circus. The emperor, was it Caligula, could not afford, or was it Nero, I forget. The emperor of Rome could not afford to feed the people anymore, and people were starving, their children were starving, and they were starting to get pissed off. So the emperor said, I don't have food to give them, so fuck it, give them a show. So he'd send the bearded lady in the circus out to the neighborhood. Hey girl, come on, let's go out here and watch the circus. I'm hungry. Well, just watch the circus, you'll forget that you're hungry, right? Isn't that what's happening to us right now with reality TV and all this spectacle? Look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that. I can't keep up. My brain's overloaded. I can't pay attention that they're not fixing anything. They're trying to fix the quality of bush meat. I've never tasted bush meat, by the way. What about you, Wani?
No, I have not.
We went to this real fancy hotel in Ghana called Aliza, and they had this breakfast. It looked so beautiful, and I walked up there hungry as fuck and looked at the platter, and they had like gigantic slugs on the plate.
What did they
You
call
know,
them? Do you remember?
I don't know, but I lost my appetite. I didn't touch it. I couldn't eat
They do
anything.
eat
I could.
slugs. That's a whole nother room about the food and them claiming our food. We don't eat these things that you eat. They don't even have a cookbook, but these are the things that the Europeans saw them eating and rejected it. Those are their natural foods.
Yeah, that's a big difference. Is food. No matter where I go in the United States, there's some type of similarity amongst food with respect to black foundational black Americans. Even though my dad's side of the family is from the whole Maryland, D.C. area, and they do the crab thing, which is fucking delicious, by the way. Next time you're in Baltimore, get a crab at the Inner Harbor. The crabs are gigantic, but it's some similarity to the way the crab tastes in soul food, even though I wouldn't really consider it soul food, but it's something soulful about the way the crab tastes. You get it? But on the continent, I couldn't vibe with the food. I did have one delicious milkshake that was bomb as hell. It had honey and milk in it, and it was like bomb. But other than that, I kept losing my appetite. Jollof don't really taste like anything.
Right.
It doesn't have a distinguishable taste.
The like I was reading about slugs. I don't want people to think that I'm being um snobbish toward other people's food choices. It's not like I'm just saying, oh, we're eating the right food. Because number one, I'm a vegan, so obviously I didn't want to eat a lot of things that most people eat. That's not the point. Some of these things are not supposed to be eaten by human beings because they have parasites, and slugs are one of them. They said, number one, slugs are nasty. They have a mucus coating that makes them bitter, and they don't even taste good. But most of them are not poisonous, and a lot of them are. Um, they have parasites, and these parasites can kill you and give you meningitis and other disorders. And that's why I don't understand why they're eating these things. They don't have to, they have other choices. And they continue to eat animals that are not on the food chain and shouldn't be, like pangolins, which it looks like an armadillo, different types of animals. Two of these groups, Africans and Asians, continue to eat these types of foods that are just, they're not created for human consumption, and they shows by us having a very negative effect to them.
Yeah, there's some obsession with pangolin. I think they're actually kind of like adorable,
Oh,
in a way. I like animals, but yeah, there's certain cultures. I think I forget which Asian culture, but they believe it has magical powers.
well, these two people were eating one. I think it was in the Gambia, and they were like, "Oh, it's kind of like eating a dinosaur. Isn't this QL?" And it's just like they just don't get it. They just think they can eat anything, and you really can't. You can't. It's best to raise food for human consumption and grow food for human consumption rather than doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I want some chickens. I think in Tennessee it's this store called Tractor and Co. I'm starting to miss Tennessee actually. Tennessee is really interesting. It's kind of like a it's country, but it's anyway. Tractor Co. Company, whatever, and they sell like I used to buy lawnmowers and stuff for my Jeep. But they got a little section in the back with like some little chickens that they keep under a red light, like they used to have that red light at the burger joint to keep your burger warm. Um, I think I want me some chickens. I think I got to get me about 4 or 5 chickens. It's a lady down the street from our house now that got chickens, and I think I want to grow my own food. The older I get, I'm more Alabama I start to turn. I can't run from it's coming. It's
It's
haunting me.
coming out. I don't have any
Yeah,
farming genes. I come from city folk.
city folk.
Yes, they've been away from farming since I'd say maybe the mid 1800s.
I've never been to Philadelphia. I've been to DC 1,000 times. I've been to New York a whole bunch of times. I've driven through Philly because it's on the way to New York. But you know what? I think I'm gonna stop in Philly and check out a cheesesteak. I want to see what that's all
Those are
about.
very popular. I've had one before. Hoagies,
I want
cheesesteaks, pastrami sandwiches, corned beef sandwiches. What else? You might as well get some raisin bread and some cream cheese and a cheesecake while you're over there.
to. Ooh,
I know all the foods.
food is good. All right, next subject. What we got?
Any suggestions? Anybody want to talk about something since we already determined that we were in fact not immigrants and we did in fact build the United States of America and sculpt a culture that is globally embraced?
Yep, it's ours. Sorry, people. Anybody want to contribute? Well, I wanted to point out something that Isabella said in her book while we wait on somebody to contribute if they want. Isabella says, um, if there are anxieties at the top, so much more at the bottom. I guess she was trying to say as above, so below, but I digress. The caste system has historically rewarded snitches and sellouts amongst the lowest caste, as with the enforcers of the concentration camps of the Third Reich and drivers from southern plantations. This was such a common device that in America, several names for such a person amongst them, Uncle Tom or HNIC, head Negro in charge. People in the lowest caste come to resent these stooges of the caste system as much, if not more, than they resented the dominant caste itself. Even as others in the lowest caste try to escape the basement, those left behind can tug at ones trying to rise. Marginalized people across the world, including African Americans, call this phenomenon crabs in a barrel. Many of the slave rebellions or later attempts at unionizing African American laborers in the South were thwarted because of this phenomenon. People subverting those who tried to get out. The spies paid with extra peck of privilege for forewarning the dominant caste of unrest. These behaviors unwillingly work to maintain a hierarchy that those betraying their brethren are seeking to escape. That's one of our biggest problems. And it seems like every space I end up circumnavigating back to meritorious manumission. We need to get out of that because, all we have is each other. That's all we got.
Yes, there are definitely some monkey wrenches being thrown in here and there out of the blue.
Right.
So I'm going to read off some incidences of medical apartheid. But before I do, I'm going to mention a white group of women, just so you know how low these people will go. So these are called the Radium Girls. And this is a group of women that were hired to, just regular white women, hired to paint glow in the dark watches, right? And they were told to stick their tongue on the tip of the paintbrush to keep it wet instead of using water. And they would lick this brush all day. Now, the paint was glow in the dark, and they didn't know had radiation poisoning abilities. And so they were just licking this over and over and over again, painting the face of the clock, and the clock would glow in the dark. And so when their bosses would come to visit them to see how they were doing, they had on hazmat suits. But these women were so naive, they didn't get it. They were just like, why are these guys all, we're just,
I shouldn't laugh at
I
that.
know, but that's how naive
That's
people
actually
were.
really sad.
They just sat there continuing to lick. And these women died the worst deaths you can imagine. Oh my God. They had
Yep.
goiters, they had tumors that were in their neck mostly, and their tumors were as big as their heads or more. They had astronomical tumors like the elephant man. It was a disaster. And these men knew they were doing it. Like, who does that? You're in a hazmat suit visiting these women, knowing they're being poisoned, knowing they're gonna die over a Timex watch or some cheesy watch. I have no idea what kind of business decision that was and how you're going to hide these women being that sick and replace them with other women, but that's what they did to white women workers. So we know about, I'm just going to name some of these scandals. You know that enslaved women had uh, gynecological experiments done on them, which is the reason that we're far ahead in that field. And they did not use any kind of uh, anesthesia,
Uh,
and they didn't give
Anesthesia is
consent at all. They just did that. The Tuskegee
cheese.
syphilis study. We have had Black infant mortality rates have been very high for a long time. We've had a lot of environmental pollution in our neighborhoods, and also white people have had environmental pollution where they have, um, built brand new condos on top of landfills because they were too cheap to clean it up. They literally had a whole ghost story where they built some things on a landfill and on a burial site. And those people got cancer and everything else playing around with those developers. Of course, we know about the Henrietta Lacks cell harvest scandal. We've had a eugenics sterilization scandal. In the early 20th century, they forced sterilization on Black Americans to eliminate undesirable traits. which is probably us to them. Um, and we were victims of unethical radiation experiments. They probably use that to, oh yeah, it does say they use that too, for cancer, to help use radiation on cancer in the future. We've had unauthorized body dissections on corpses. They stole corpses from graves, and they've done a lot of sickle cell anemia research exploitation without proper consent. They've experimented on prisoners without proper consent. Um, Lead poisoning, and this affected anybody exposed to that, but mostly Black American children.
Children, and that's intentional because lead, it interferes with your development, your what do you call it, your intellectual development. And I've caught certain jurisdictions historically playing with lead levels. Now, I'm not going to say that I can prove that it's intentional, but these jurisdictions are mostly foundational Black American, like Memphis, Tennessee. I taught at a high school that had lead in the fucking water fountain, and they never fixed it. They had big crates of bottled water. You know, how do you get away with that?
Well, this says it is deliberate, so they have been gotten in trouble for it, and they did it to get the data of the effects of the poison. So they wanted to see what effects the poison had on human beings, and they didn't care if it was children. They certainly didn't care if it was Black American children. Remember, there are very few 100% or 90% Black American communities. We'll call it a Black American community if it has 30% Black Americans. I remember that. I said, what about all the rest of these people?
Facts.
And so they poison the white people that live there too, and they don't really care. That's when you're in danger, when they're willing to murder women deliberately to make a cheesy watch. These people are very dangerous, and you must protect yourself. You must make sure you know what you're eating and what medication you're ingesting. You are in control of these things. Nobody else, not the
Right.
doctor, nobody. You go online and look up the side effects. You make a decision whether you want to be bothered with these things. You look at the label. No one else. You can't trust anyone else. Even with those safeguards, um, you can still be harmed. So back to the one, I'll keep going. Um, Mental health diagnosis misuse. Misdiagnosing people on purpose to test medication out on them. This was done in prisons to incarcerated people. They gave in Cleveland Clinic unethical studies between the 1950s and 1960s. They used experimental drugs on Black Americans without proper consent. Now we know that they did a similar study on some poor white people or whoever was going with those LSD experiments. Now, like, hey, let's see how this works. And they didn't care if they destroyed people and made them clinically insane and left them out there like that. Willowbrook School hepatitis studies, and they did unethical hepatitis experiments on intellectually disabled Black American children. So they took advantage of um, intellectually disabled Black American children. Yeah, like, what is wrong with these people? Stanford prison experiment in 1971. Study included Black Americans subjected to inhumane treatment and ethical violations. Here's another one. Oren's radiation experiments. And they exposed Black American patients, pregnant women, children to harmful radiation without consent. Like, really? Um, Again, just to see how things work. And I guess they're
Just because,
yeah,
just because.
just because we want to. We want to make sure that when we give this treatment out, we're going to kill all of you guys and give you radiation poisoning so we can treat people with cancer and know how much to give them without tearing their bodies apart. Um, they had a what they call an African American burial ground desecration. And so this is a lot of excavations and studies of Black American burial grounds conducted without respect. And then they used some of the remains for unethically. And they, they do. I don't know what these people are doing. They're literally ghouls, literal ghouls. um, Holmesburg prison experiments, 1950s and 1970s. Philadelphia facility conducted dermatological chemical tests on Black American inmates without consent. I mean, there's a lot, but those are just the ones that they have admitted to and got prosecuted for. And then there was a report in 1979. It addressed ethics in human subject research, emphasized informed consent and respect to the participants. That was a Belmont Report publication to try to address some of these atrocities that they've been doing the whole time up until 1979, which they're still doing, which they will trick people into doing it even to this day. And they really don't care what race they are. They just take advantage of people. And they love to take advantage of us the most because we are the most vulnerable. That's another reason that we have to be more diligent about what we're accepting as medication and what we're eating because we are targeted.
Yeah, you can tell a lot about the a society based on the way it treats its most vulnerable prisoners, military servicemen. You watch how they treat the prisoners and treat our enlisted servicemen and women, and you can tell a lot about the society. Yesterday, in yesterday's space, I couldn't put anything in the jumbotron, and I made a real bold claim that I had a map that was taken out the Library of Alexandria. I gag every time I say that. I wish I knew what it actually was called. Maybe I need to refer to it as a stolen library. Anyhow, my jumbotron's working, and I have the map. Would you like to see it?
Yes.
Stand by.
What is the map about again?
The map. Can you hear me? I don't know if I had the mute button on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can
Okay.
hear you.
The map is from a special collection, and it shows Antarctica with houses, roads, and kingdoms, and palm trees. So
Oh my goodness.
there's
We discussed that, remember? That's
yeah.
not the Turkish map.
Mm-mm. It's Perry
That's
Reef.
another map.
Whole another one. I put a little bit in there.
Oh boy.
Special
This
collections,
is
my
gonna
friend.
be this is gonna be fun. And it doesn't say a date, right?
But they dated it. They say it was made in 1513. They think, or maybe it was found in 1513. I don't know.
I was going remember when we were speaking yesterday about handsomeness and Andy was saying that handsome didn't mean the same thing as it meant now. I'm gonna read some of these descriptions. just so we can know after I check this map out, though. I'm going to read some of these um, terms regarding black, but I want to check this map out real quick.
Yeah, Dr. Welsing identifies that obsession with you know, the sexual power of black men and women. She goes real deep. I think that's one of the reasons why I like Welsing is when I was studying the dead white men, that's what they call them. You know, no offense intended, but you know they call them the dead white men. Freud, um, Piaget, Erickson, what's that bastard's name? Skinner, B.F. Skinner's old evil ass, and Jung, Pavlov. I really got found my niche with respect to psychology in Pavlov, Vygotsky, the Russians. You know that, like we were saying earlier, there's something about us and the Russians, and Jung, Carl Jung. Jung would be the deepest one, but Dr. Welsing is a Jungian psychiatrist. She's heavy Jung, and Jung deals in symbols, and he says your brain, on a deep level, operates in symbols. Mankind and its symbols. I recommend everybody in the room buy that. Well, let's examine the symbolism of rape. Hopefully, no little ones are listening to this. Tuck the little ones away. Um, we won't go that deep. Let's see. Weapons out of sense of genetic one. Hold on, I'm looking for one that. Okay, in today's world, according to Dr. Welsing, in today's world, rape is common. In the U.S., it is reported in the highest incidence amongst members of the black population, with black males raping black females. They are said to be an appropriately equal. Well, I'm going to start right there. This book was written in 1978. And I've seen statistics that show that and then rape statistics are exponentially higher for Caucasian males. It's unfortunate either which way, but with black males raping. Okay, it is said to be an approximately equal incident of white males raping black females as black males raping white females. The incidence of white males raping white females is the lowest. I would argue because it's not reported as much. In past decades, white male rape with black male females has the highest incidence. Instead of breaking into the hysteria of the women's movement regarding the issue of rape, I prefer to examine the meaning of this behavior. Here we go. Commencing with male use of male genitalia. As I've stated in my writings for the past 10 years, there is no behavior that can be adequately understood and decoded outside the context of power relationships that exist amongst people. In today's world, the most functional of all relationships is that of white versus non white. Powerlessness, underlying factors and forces have led to the evolution of this specific power system are number one, the numerical minority status of European globally, and number two, the uh, the genetic status, like dominance of genes. So Dr. Welton boiled it down, like, and she identified that there's a fear of genetic annihilation, and it may be unconscious. Um, when I was studying Freud, I mean, people just don't say they. I mean, you can have a problem with your marriage right now and go sit with a psychologist, and they'll use Freudian psychology on you as a black male, a black female, and it don't even apply to us. Freud himself said that. The black man and black woman, we're different. We just think differently. And that really goes back to nature versus nurture. Where were we nurtured um, on a subconscious level? Um, the black man and woman came from and I love these terms, the Holocene, the Misocene. It was a time and place where food, the Misocene was like Garden of Eden time period, fruit just falling out the sky and shit. Animals weren't really aware that humans were a threat. Maybe we weren't because the world was full of melanated men and women, and we tend to kind of get along with animals. That's no cap, man. Those of you who don't know me, I spent a good little while in West Africa in the jungle, and we went walking through the jungle, and a bunch of monkeys just, you know, walked up on us, and we sharing bananas with the monkeys. They weren't afraid, you know, because the people ain't hurt them. People over there ain't trying to hurt monkeys. I'm from Alabama, but what you say?
It's fun. It's fun having another primate hanging out with you, isn't it?
It's so amazing.
Funny, because they're like little people. You're looking at them like, yeah, you're not like a dog or a cat. You know things.
Yeah, and they brought their You seen the picture, Wani? They brought their children. And
Mm-hmm.
the monkeys brought their children, and it was just like so interesting. I realized that European society, like hunts things and kills things, and you get different responses from European dominated society from animals, namely running away or getting cornered and attacking you. But I digress.
Those are the senses. Again, we have to have another room on. Their senses are different. They they can't just enjoy the mountain. Like I said before, they have to climb up on top of it and just like mount it. Um, can't just enjoy the flowers. It has to be pulled out. And this is the same thing. Can't just enjoy the animal and say, "Hey, what a beautiful lion." Nope, I got to cut the head off and put it on the wall. Um, it's just it's a completely different response to nature and to beauty and to things that most people don't have to do all that.
Yeah, Welsing talks about that in great detail. She says that um, for some reason the European is alienated. I have my theories. I think it's the Young Dryas. I think they came into being during the Ice Age, and I think that lack of green, lack of like that barren climate kind of stopped them from having the same type of experiences that George Washington Carver had.
Hmm. Well, I've never believed the out of Africa theory because one major issue we discussed, the people in the Basque region, they're not from that area. They don't fit in with any of the out of Africa models. And they're a group of people. But what sense does it make for someone to leave uh, East Africa and go up and herd reindeer in the tundra? Who would do that? And why? I mean, people say, "Oh, well, it wasn't cold when they went up there." Well, it got cold, and when it got cold, why didn't they all move back down? Why isn't there any movement away from that? Why did they just begin to eat seal blubber and make sealskin boots and make, igloos and live in such bitter conditions? And I mean, these conditions are incredible. You don't even understand how they're human. It's like they're another species. The conditions are so rough.
Yeah, and they live in those huts made out of ice. Like I can't even comprehend that.
Mm-hmm. They know how to make them, and they have a long history of making them. And so they make them very quickly. They deliver their own babies. There's a very good documentary called Nanook of the North. Check it out.
I saw it in
Nanook.
grad school.
Yeah, it. I don't think it's very long. Nanook of the North gives you an idea of that lifestyle and the bravery. The things that they were doing all day just let you know how active people were. Like just all day long, the woman was, making sealskin boots, getting food, fixing it. The man was trapping furs and hunting down and following polar bears and wrestling with them and building igloos and managing dogs. And all day long, these people were active. And then the white man came and said, we want the resources here. Go sit in this rec room and watch TV or watch whatever we have. I think that was like in the 20s. So they just sit in a rec room and shut up. How can you do that to people who live like that, who have that much activity, that are fighting polar bears? The man fought polar bears, and now he's got to sit in a rec room and get on welfare. And you wonder why people drink all day up there and have all kinds of emotional issues. You can't remove someone from their entire lifestyle and expect them to just go along with it. Anyway, I got off topic. What I was trying to say is I don't believe that people left Africa and went to the tundra or a lot of these very harsh places.
What's your belief system?
It's too hard for the audience. Well, one thing I'll say, I believe some of the myths of the groups, different groups, and they just say they're from different places. And, science is going to say, no, you guys have a similar DNA and you come from here and you come from there. But I just don't believe it. I believe that people are completely different and they are never going to be the same. Like, just like with the Inuit people, they're not going to do certain things. I'm not going to be, I'm not being trite and I'm not being um, dismissive, but a man just said on a documentary I was listening to, dolphins are not going to build skyscrapers. They're never going to do that. And that's something that certain groups of people do. And that's the same way I feel about certain groups of people. It's not that they're stupid, they don't want to do some of these things that we're doing. And they don't have to. There's no law that says you just have to get the latest iPhone and live in this fast paced life that we live in that moves at the speed of light. Some people want to live at a slower pace. I've gone places where they're still doing the same thing that they were doing before. Like they haven't changed. They're still weaving the same baskets and still making the same pots that they made 4,000 years ago. And they literally learned this from their ancestors. Places in Turkey, they're just sitting there making the same identical carpets, pottery, and they're not living the speed that we're living. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I know, other communities like in Mongolia, they still live in a yurt. Yes, they have some tall buildings and they have a city, but they live in their yurts and they don't care um, if people think that's backward. That's where they want to live and that's how they want to live. Um, everybody every culture does not aspire to do the same things, and people don't understand that.
What's the
And
possibility that Eurocentric culture is silly and the way we're living is just not the right way. It's too fast. It's too rushed. There's no time to enjoy life. It's structural, it's structured, it's rigid, it's anti-life. Dr. Amos Wilson said it's death. It's not life. Life has a spontaneity to it. We are concerned with doing the same things over and over again. That's death. When you're in a casket, you're doing the same thing over and over again. You know, so we're definitely outside of our culture. I'm sure of it, but I'm just trying to discover you know, what our culture is
Now,
entirely.
I wanted to just point out some different people that I met around the world. And one of the things that they were saying is that we're being pressured to go to school in the city. I heard this from three different groups. And when we think about it, because I was just sitting there, talking to them, I said, when you think about it, you're being told to leave a place where you know how to make your own shelter, grow your own food, gather your own food. You're being asked to go to the city to learn some things so you can get a job and buy food and shelter, which you already know how to create for yourselves.
Facts.
And you've been doing it for thousands of years successfully. But I did say I'm not against you going to school or having experiences outside of the Amazon jungle or outside of the tundra. I'm not against that, or outside of the Hunza Valley. But I will say that the people that did not leave, the people in the Hunza Valley that didn't leave, they look way better than their children. Their children are bloated, tired, angry, can't barely walk around, and the grandfather is 80 years old and he's walking 10 miles gathering nuts off the tree.
Ripped.
Ripped, 80 years old with a six pack, possibly eight pack, in shape, busy, keeping his mind busy, not worrying about things, not having polluted water, not having a polluted city and air. There's a difference. He's up there in the Hunza Valley and it is like a paradise up there. But his children had to go to the city, and now his grandchildren are very unfit. They're not in shape. The grandfather that was 80 years old looked better than all of them, and everybody admitted it. Everybody admitted this. This is not even debatable. In fact, they went up there and made a cookbook of what that guy was eating. Period, point blank.
Yeah, we're outside of our culture, and we're stuck inside of a culture that I think I have a good understanding for. We're living in a Eurocentric ideology. We're essentially living in a cave. We go to our little houses, we hide in the darkness. We come together in huddle groups. And I'm not criticizing it. That works. But it's not us. It's some drive inside of me as a black man or an indigenous man to be outside. I need to go. I need to get up and be. I want to be outside. You know what I'm saying? I want to be even better. I want to be around the trees. Now, with respect to the pace of life being off and skew, there's a really good book by Marimba Ani called Yorugu. Have you had a chance to read that yet?
Yes.
Okay, so and I can't find it to save my ass, but there's a part in there. I promise it's a part in there where she talks about Yorugu, or the devil, how um, God creates everything in pairs, black, white, um, proton, neutron, and she argues that the devil, um, who's referred to as Yorugu, um, in his arrogance, burst out of time. When time space was pregnant with him, he burst out of time early in 6 months as opposed to 9 months. And since he did that, he didn't get his pair. It's such a beautiful. It's a kind of a hard read. What was your opinion about the difficulty level to read it?
I found myself reading it over and over again, but that's don't go by me because I sometimes do that.
Yeah, I couldn't. The concepts were Marimba really had some advanced concepts in there because there's a phenomena that happens when when a human being um, understands a very complex math problem. They go to sleep. Like I forgot what it's called, but like when you're working on like a calculus problem and you're working inside of your brain,
Hmm.
before you know it, you're like sleep. That Yurugu did that to me. Every time I read it, like I get a couple paragraphs and be like, man, I'm tired as
Oh,
hell.
I thought you were going to talk about the phenomena when the inventors say that they take a nap because right at the beginning of waking up you come up with answers, but no, you went another way.
Yeah, yeah. You see it with I used to teach physics, and when you I teach those concepts out of physics, kinematics, the kids would be like, "Oh, wow," and then like they're asleep. I think your brain needs a chance to like kind of process things. I don't know. I wish I could think of the name of that phenomenon.
Well, anyway, I have looked at the different ways that people live, and yeah, it like people in France seem like they had a better balance than the United States. They're just more relaxed. I mean, they close the businesses in the middle of the day, they take long family vacations, and they prioritize their family and friends, and they don't prioritize work. This country does prioritize work and money and this type of thing. And people know it's wrong. That's the sad part about it. People know what they're doing, they inherently know it's wrong and that they're miserable and they can't get out of it. But we all, I believe almost everybody, has had the urge to run away
Yeah.
and go live in the woods somewhere and get off the merry-go-round.
Oh yeah. And Atlanta has these big old like beautiful trees that you see in going towards North Alabama. Like Alabama and Atlanta and Georgia got some gigantic trees.
Yeah, and these other cultures, they prize these trees. They treat these trees like friends. They treat mountains like friends, and they see things differently. And we just walk past these trees. Don't think they're special. Don't pay any attention to them. It's a completely different way of living. And I really think that I don't think it's with Inuit people, even Native Americans to some extent, even though they have a lot of mixtures going on. I think they inherently see things differently. I just don't think they're the same people as other groups. People that live in the Amazon, certain African tribes, pygmies, you could say, Batwa people, probably the tree people you hung out with, the Khoisan, a lot of people you will find along the Omo River in Ethiopia. I do not think that they're like city folk. They don't see things the same way, they don't have the same values, and I really don't think it comes down to uh, nature versus nurture. I just don't. I fundamentally think that they're a different type of people.
Yeah. Um I totally agree with their nature versus nurture has shaped them to be something totally different. It's one of my least favorite things about Eurocentric culture is that everything is supposed to be cookie cutter when really it's cookie cutter now, but when you get out in the real world, you learn real fast that a lot of things are innovated. You know what I'm saying? Any other thoughts, Wani?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. We went from, who built America, immigrants or Black Americans, to whether Inuit people want to build skyscrapers. So I think we did good.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our session today. I really enjoyed y'all. I learned a lot, and hopefully, you learned a lot as well. Um, we'll pick things back up with another topic tomorrow, same time, same place. So, without further ado, I wish you all well, and I want to leave you with a little scholarship. Let's see if I can find it right quick. Um, let's see. Let's go with Dr. Claude Anderson. He says, keeping blacks in a minority status. Dr. Claude Anderson says, white society has always placed a great deal of importance on maintaining the power and controlling through numerical dominance. Since public policy stressed keeping blacks in a controlled subordinate state with meritorious manumission right, the national immigrant laws, beginning with the first one in 1790, were used as control tools. Immigration policies and laws kept the black population below the white comfort level, usually less than 8%. During the 20 years preceding the Revolutionary War, the colonial settlers were extremely fearful of the uncontrolled number of black slaves being shipped to the country. By 1750, the percentage of the total national population that was black had reached nearly a third. So, with that, let's keep in mind that immigration is being used as a weapon against our people. And although we're not, I'm not a bigot. I'm not against any human beings. I am for my tribe. I am for my family. And next time we meet, we'll come up with strategies to better protect our tribe and protect our children and walk back in the sunlight. All right, guys. I enjoyed y'all. Y'all have a good night, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Good night.
Good night.